that screen than they did on the original Cowboy Stadium.
Is that the one with the iris that opens up?
Yeah,
Stadium?
the original one.
Oh, that's New Orleans. It has the iris.
That's the
That's
Mercedes-Benz.
It's like an iris. You know how your
Oh,
eye
yeah.
We're
opens
good.
up.
We're good. I will call the Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. Let the record show today is March 6th, 2019. The time is 9:00 a.m. I wonder if I could call on Mr. Bob to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Could you do that, sir?
Attention, please. God bless.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir.
That's my pleasure.
Should ask you ahead of time, and I... Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Flower.
Present.
Commissioner Canby.
Here.
Commissioner Prince.
Here.
Attorney Clint Smith.
Present.
And Clerk to the Board Kelly Camper present.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Amendments to the agenda, gentlemen.
I have none.
No, sir.
Nor do I. Thank you. Audience introductions. Miss Jackie.
Jackie Bubis for the Sentinel.
Lynn McGree, Airport.
Giacomelli Airport.
Thank you. Welcome. Glad to have you all here. I do not believe we have any minutes to approve. Commissioner items. Commissioner Prince, would you care to start, sir?
Since yesterday, the only thing I did was what three of us did. We attended the review of the architectural firm proposals and set out the standards. Bless you, sir.
Excuse me.
And set out the standards on how we're going to go ahead and interview and make some decisions as to a couple that didn't meet the criteria. And I thought we had a very enlightening meeting. Of course, both of you were there, so I'm talking to the rest of you.
I had a totally different perspective.
Yeah. What meeting were you?
Commissioner Canby?
Yeah, I was there too, of course, and it was a good deal. The good news is we had a lot of interest. 7, if you didn't know it, we had 7 companies bid on it, put a bid in, and 1 out of state. So it's a pretty big deal that I didn't realize there were that many companies that are in the business of designing justice centers and jails, but there are. And that's good because it benefits us. And it's competition. You could see what competition does because all their fees were, they presented competitive stuff for us. So that's really good news. And let's see what else. Got the ads in the paper. So it is true that the last 2 meetings on the prosperity plan are next Tuesday and Thursday. Task force meeting followed by the joint task force community meeting. That will be at Tony's on Thursday, and the other will be at Rancher's Roost.
Tuesday the 12th.
Did I say that? No, I didn't.
You said Tuesday and Thursday.
I meant Thursday the 21st. I'm sorry, 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
21st
The
and
19th and the 21st.
yeah, 19th and the 21st.
That I
I'm
have.
sorry.
Okay.
I put it in for 2 weeks so that we would be sure we got the word out.
Yeah. So 5:30 to 7:30 at Tony's,
Yeah.
and then the time on the 21st. I know you gave me that paper. I just have not put that in the
I
calendar.
had 5 o'clock on Tuesday.
It's 5 o'clock on.
5:30.
On third. Oh,
I'm looking at
Tuesday?
the 9th.
Okay, Bill, you have got us
I'm
all.
gonna
Who's- I was
I'm gonna
gonna
get
say,
it out.
who's
Here it is. Here, I've got it.
I will get it right.
Okay.
Okay.
Tuesday the 19th, 5:30, 7:30.
5:30. Okay.
Thursday, March 21st, 9 in the morning. Oh, excuse me. 21st, it's 9 in the morning to 11 here.
Oh, not at Rancher's Room.
No,
That's going to be
it's going to be here,
Commissioner's Room?
Commissioner's Room. It's not at Rancher's Roost. The big meeting's going to be at Tony's because they're expecting, good turnout. That's what we're hoping for.
Got it. Okay.
9
And
to
it-
11.
Yeah,
Huh?
and it doesn't look like we're going to need the additional funds unless the guys on that joint meeting want to have another meeting but it doesn't look like we'll tap into what we'd authorized, an additional $1,000 or whatever it was. So that's good, and we'll have a few dollars left over from it. All right, that's all I had for now.
Okay, I also attended the RFP meeting yesterday, and then went out to the Saddle Club building. The extension agent and program had a meat quality assurance program, lasted a couple hours. I did not stay for all of it, but because I had another board meeting I attended with the Saddle Club and the Fair Board. It had just kind of been a monitoring position of moving ahead with their strategic plan and their master plan that they're trying to develop with CU Denver. And so
Get the water turned on.
you got the water turned on and then turned off again last night. So, and that's all I have done. Attorney items?
Just same thing. I was at the Justice Center meeting yesterday to look at all the proposals that we got. Very interesting from a layman's perspective who has no knowledge of any of this. I did watch the Justice Center in Pueblo. You know, it took 10 years of planning to get to the point where they finally were ready to build it. The sheriff jumped the gun there, didn't want to wait for a detention center, so went ahead and built his own, which is now a hassle, because now they're transporting prisoners about a dozen blocks or so.
Right, yeah, that is a problem.
Back and forth constantly, and and they have a lot of prisoners that have to come to court just about every. They try to do as much by TV as they can, but it's still a problem for them. I think the one thing, and this is way down the road, but when it comes time to try to convince the taxpayers and the voters in this county that this needs to be done, the one thing that if we don't do this, state judicial could probably take some action to force us to do it. You know, if we don't provide an adequate courtroom facility, they could step in.
And jail, right?
And the jail, that one is just liability. State judicial doesn't care about our jail. But if, we have prisoners getting sick over there or escaping or anything because of the inadequacy of that facility, then we're going to be in a huge lawsuit at some point. So there's certainly some urgency for this.
And there's some precedents for that too.
Oh,
there
sure.
was a local or relatively close county that was forced to do that by the state.
Right. So that's the thing, is that if we don't do it voluntarily, and it's, no matter how we go about it, it's, the taxpayers are going to have to be footing the bill for something that a lot of them will never use personally, so it's hard to try to make them understand why it's important that we get it done. I was thinking, all these plans are already done for the Lake County Center, and they couldn't get the funding approved. Maybe we ought to just use theirs and save all that money for the design phase.
There's a lot of truth to this, seriously.
Well, that's not my decision. And incidentally, when you talked about or mentioned that there was a decision made at that meeting yesterday, it wasn't a decision by the commissioners.
No.
It was a decision by the committee as which ones they wanted to go forward and have presentations from. But that's all I did yesterday.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Administrative assistant?
Just working on grants.
Oh, I almost said /grant writer. No, we don't need to be
Or she could be a grant writer / administrator.
making that any more than it is.
Depends on what hat she's wearing.
So,
Professional.
Professional. Let us not forget.
yeah, that's right.
What pays the best? What pays the best?
Right now, there's not much in it for a grant writer.
Any public comment this morning? Hearing none, we'll move on. Staff reports, unless you had something, sir. And I jumped the gun.
He is the public too.
I was neglected in the commission reports, and just bringing up one issue. Westcliff had its town meeting last night, and they're concerned about us reopening and rediscussing the marijuana growing cultivation question since they've already adopted it. Apparently Silver Cliff had a lot of pushback and they're trying to soften it, but they've tabled it for the moment, so.
Silvercliff did.
Silver Cliff did.
Right.
Westcliff has
Has already adopted it.
and they said to me, are they, the Westcliff of course, need to amend theirs if we adopt something different? And I told them that.
We need to be consistent, probably.
Well, I told them that, you know, that's what the sheriff is really pushing for, so he has one consistent set of laws for the entire county. So it may make sense to do that. And then, of course, in the showers, I'm thinking to myself, you know, we got some very strong, because I've done a lot of research on this since the question really came up. Got some really strong laws in the state of Colorado for cultivating how many plants you could have, where it could be, who could have it, it's gotta be locked up. I mean, the laws are pretty, and I'm scratching my head going, I'm not sure really why we're doing this, but, I mean, I'm not saying we should abandon it, I'm just questioning what the purpose of this.
Maybe it means Shannon and towns get together and decide what we are trying.
Well, I invited Shannon to come to, I have a meeting tomorrow evening with a group that discussed with us, so I invited Shannon to come with it. He has a copy of the outline I did of the suggested changes that the group that was here is requesting, and
You know, I understand what Westcliff and Silver Cliff are doing.
well, and therein lies the issue, and the reason I brought it up is because Westcliff has approved, Silver Cliff has not. So, Westcliff is amenable to
Changing.
modifying theirs to be consistent if necessary. I also told them, I said, it's already on the books, if you guys wanna leave it, that's your decision, and I talked to the trustees, of course. It's their decision on what they wanna do, not mine.
Didn't they get any, didn't they publish it? Didn't they get any kickback? Didn't anybody attending like we did?
Not one word, it was published, it was open meetings, I mean, it was read multiple
There, right.
times, and I don't know, nobody seemed to mind.
Well, I sure don't wanna leap into, personally, it's my opinion, I don't wanna leap into making a decision and have it, not be consistent and.
Well, they were a
and
little
be wrong.
miffed that, and it was entirely my fault, and I take full blame for this. I had told them when it was presented to them that the county had approved it, because we approved the first reading and signed it. I jumped the gun, and I told them that I said it was approved by the county, when in fact it wasn't, because we hadn't signed up for the second reading. So,
Maybe we can have this discussion at our executive roundtable on Friday.
That'd be a good
and
one.
I think that would be a wonderful time to
And then
discuss
come
it.
up with a time frame. We don't have to leap into this. Do the right thing.
They
With
thought it
urgency.
was, Westcliff said they thought it was probably hastily done, and, maybe we should have.
I know it's a reaction to what we've had happening and trying to get things under control that are actual illegal grows and those guys. That's how that started in the first place.
Right, well, I'll give you a preview of one of the things that the group voluntarily said to me is they would like to form a little growers association and register it with the sheriff, pay an annual fee between $50 and $25, he said a nominal fee, and so that the sheriff would know where the grows are, so that anybody who's not growing part of this organization, the sheriff then could take a keener eye on that
That's
kind of
good.
thing. And they volunteer this.
That's great.
And I told Shannon yesterday that I didn't feel we could force them to do that, but if they voluntarily wanted to form an organization, that really may help, with,
Well,
with some of the issues.
to me, it's sort of like zoning, and we could come up with the same kind of thing.
Right, I mean,
But that would be, if they're volunteering, then it's even better.
right, but when I thought about what they want and what the laws of the state of Colorado say that we have to abide by, at least that would be the minimum. We can make it more stringent, not more lenient.
It's true.
They're pretty strong. I mean, if Shannon does his job properly, and I don't mean to cast any aspersions on Shannon, but I mean, if the sheriff's department does their job diligently, I'm not sure that this ordinance, I personally am not sure I understand what the purpose of this
That's why we gotta look at it.
I mean, it limits certain grows and how many acres and how many square feet and that kind of thing, but
Well,
it's pretty well established.
didn't he mention, I don't know, this sort of came across like if you had 6 adults living in one residence instead of family of two, that, you know,
I agree.
and then you end up
There
with
could-
12
there
plants.
could be more
You see what I'm
plants.
saying there? You
Yes.
could actually have a facetious commercial grow going
And
in.
therein
That's
lies
the
why,
problem.
and I brought that up to this group, and therein lies why they're interested in registering. They will say, these are the people living in our residence, this is the number of plants we would have, and
For the
if it
reasons
changes,
of-
we would notify the sheriff's department that there's been a change. So it sounds to me like,
So that would be a cut between commercial and recreational.
you know,
Sort
they
of how
tried
they're
to bring
slated.
that up, and I said, marijuana is marijuana. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, if it makes you happy, is that antidepressant? I don't wanna go
No,
there.
that's the point.
My feeling was marijuana is marijuana. It's legal, like it or not. So, you know, there's state laws, and I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
Needs more talk.
Well, and commercial has been out, we have not accepted commercial.
That's right, that's my
Correct.
And that's
And they're
selling
only,
it.
Well, really, what
I mean, commercial like medical
yeah,
commercial.
Oh,
the
gotcha.
question was medical versus
Right,
recreational.
I'm with you.
And I said, I really don't care what you're saying, you're calling it, it's marijuana, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But anyway, I previewed what we're gonna discuss again tomorrow night.
Yeah.
This is their original proposal. Some of it sounded fairly reasonable, you know. So, anyway,
Which reminds me, I won't be able to be at that joint meeting
Right.
because I'm going to the action. I'm glad you brought that up.
He's going to Action 22 meeting in Pueblo
Board
on
of Directors
Friday.
in Pueblo.
Okay.
So I'll miss
He's on
it.
that board.
okay, that's fine. And what do we have?
I personally, that's that.
That's that round table with the
Oh,
towns.
yeah, that's fine. Well, we'll just talk about you when you're not
Yeah, I
there.
know, talk about marijuana and how I enjoy
Talk about how you sell it.
dealing with it.
No problem.
One thing I'd like to toss in, because the question was raised during the second reading last week when everybody was here. They were expressing their concerns about, the question was asked several times. You know, I based mine on a Douglas County ordinance, and they asked, well, was that ever challenged? The Douglas County ordinance was actually passed back in 2016, and it was challenged. And it didn't report in detail, but the ordinance is still there, so I have to assume the challenge. Yeah, so I just wanted to get that out there.
Good.
That's good to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on. Airport staff report. Welcome, gentlemen. You're welcome.
Bring any donuts?
No. Good morning.
Good morning,
sir.
Good morning. How are you?
All right, Joe.
Mr. Giacomelli is welcome to join us if you'd like.
He likes the cheap
Got to
stuff.
bring your own chair now.
Drag her up, Bob.
There we go.
Lily for another
There we go.
chair.
I don't know if you want to talk marijuana in airports, transportation,
Yeah, you're gonna try to be a medical ambulance for
Yeah.
marijuana?
Yeah. I got a little email last night from Bob, on some of the points he wanted to talk about today.
Bob Jolly.
Yeah.
Jolly.
Yeah. The first one was the fuel sales are so low, 87.6 for February. And I won't say what his thoughts were on why.
Thank
Can't read it.
What-
No, just
I'll paraphrase.
foul weather.
Oh, very foul.
PFW for weather.
Yeah, right. So,
Thank you for your discretion.
and the inventory as of February 28th was 2,764 gallons.
Is that standard for around this time?
Probably considering the weather. As we really get things going out there, the weather will always be a factor in what happens. Okay, then it says Armstrong identified a potential safety issue with that camera that was at the end of the runway. To the accounts, I suppose, that has been removed, so,
Which end of the runway?
north.
No.
Trade took care of that. And the windsock at the segmented circle was looked more like a flag with the storm we've been having, so that's been repaired.
Speaking of that, I did get, Vernon sent me an email, and I meant to push it to you, but the camera's fixed on the end of the website, so it's repeated access and working. And they gave me a link to hit, and I hit it, but I couldn't get it to come in at home because I don't have enough bandwidth to do anything with it.
Because I got a call day before yesterday morning from a man that wanted to know why that camera wasn't working. He was up in Denver Sounded like he had a charter flight
That's what it
into
was.
here and to pick somebody up and take them back to the runway, but didn't know if our runway had been plowed and wanted to know where that camera was.
Are we gonna replace?
So we need that fixed, and it sounds like
Got
that's
it
what he's
fixed.
doing.
Like I said, it was going into a non-existent web, or
Oh, yeah, I was there.
Yeah, a third party or whatever.
went to their own place and
So,
got it changed.
yeah. So, and a big thing that's come up I'd say the last 3 weeks, is where the fire truck is in that middle bay. The weight of that truck has destroyed that concrete pad there. So, we're gonna eventually, we need to do something about that soon.
How bad is it? I mean, is it something that needs, we
Well,
need
you can
repair right
definitely see
away?
it's indented, and I suppose the next step would be to start crumbling.
And
Well,
when
you can
drive
still
over it,
drive
You can
over
still
it.
drive
You
over
can still
it.
drive it, but
For now, I'm concerned that the fire truck turns its lights on to fight a fire and tries to pull out and falls into.
It's not a sinkhole, but it could turn into
And that's my
a
point.
pretty big
I'm not trying to be
pothole.
facetious, I mean, I'm
No.
concerned that maybe we know we're gonna have to repair it anyway, maybe we
Right.
ought to, suggestion, maybe we ought to move forward on that, so when we do need it, we don't have an issue.
We'll get Gary to put it on his schedule and see what
that's
he
yeah.
can work on.
I don't know if they wait till warmer weather
Well,
to
that's fine,
pour concrete or not.
I just don't wanna let
We'll
it.
have to figure out
Right, no,
whether
Thank
Gary
you.
should do it. or not.
Well, I was just gonna
It may
say, I'm
not
not
be him,
sure.
it would be probably a contractor.
Can we use them to
Well,
put
probably
some
the
extra-
fire department's responsibility.
Well, they'd pay for it, but I'm not gonna let them manage it. It's our responsibility, we can ask them to do it for us.
So then
They
would
should
you
pay.
guys envision doing that whole pad in front of all
Don't know.
3 doors, or just?
I wouldn't think so, I think, especially if the fire department was on the hook to pay for it, they're
They're
gonna
not gonna
want
want
to
to pay
repair
for that
what
center
was
one.
damaged.
I think they
If
ought
it's
to
all
fix what
poured
they
the same
broke.
thickness.
Yeah, they need to fix what they broke.
Would we ever have an issue with those other 2? I
What
don't
do
know.
we do? I don't think it'd be appropriate to ask them to fix areas that their truck
I
does not
agree.
drive over.
But we could
we
consider if it's prudent to do the other two.
Right,
for us
that's
to
what-
have
that's
it.
what I'm
And
saying.
that's,
May or may
that's
not be.
a very logical comment, yeah.
And can they put some extra rebar or something in front of that, where the truck comes out, so it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, you can fix
Certainly, in
it.
my opinion, it would need to be a thicker
Substantial.
slab.
Thicker pad.
Thicker slab and some, should have rebar in it, but,
Right.
Well,
But if it
whatever's
wasn't
there
thick-
isn't enough, so can they beef it up, you know?
Do it right.
put that on your to-do list, huh?
Yeah.
Coordinate with
Absolutely.
the fire department.
Okay, the last thing he's got, we had that old plow truck, remember we were using, it was sitting between the 2 hangars.
Right.
Trey did get that, we bought a new battery for it, we've got it in one of the bays now, and so we'll try to make that usable. I
Does it
think
start every
needs-
once in a while, okay?
Yeah, it's on a charger, but it needs 2 new hydraulic hoses because they're leaking. So we can't necessarily get it to town unless we chain up that plow.
What you can do is, take the hoses off, take them into Napa and they'll put fitting on them. If that's, then they'll make a new hose.
Yeah, that's, because that's what it needs, is 2 new hoses. So,
Gotta do it.
and that's all I got, guys. If
Cool.
you want to talk about anything else.
You're gonna get a rough draft of the draft from Meredith and you guys can go over it before
Okay.
we do it Friday.
Okay. She got
Yeah.
it ready?
I bet she's close.
Okay,
Because she's a professional.
yeah.
Now, wait a minute, this is.
You say before we do it on Friday, what are you
I
referring
mean,
to?
It's gotta be turned in.
we need to look at before we push it over to Cindy, I think. Or Christie. She wants to see it and then she's gonna just comment on it herself as well. We can get an email and we can make comments. The grant itself, rough draft of the grant.
Yeah, so tomorrow I'll send it to y'all, and
Yeah.
then on the 8th, send it to Christy.
Now, we need to make sure we cover everything, but you'll have a good idea. Make her as strong as we can.
So the commissioners are not going to officially
We're not gonna sit down and vote.
vote on it.
No.
We'll just go in.
You got an idea that improves the quality of the presentation, that's good. Because we're gonna get it back, Christie's gonna get it back to her comments so that we can clean it up and make it stronger to what she thinks they'll like to see, so that's her plan.
Well, try to open up for us this. Haven't we previously agreed that the 3 commissioners would approve local requests that go out for the county?
Sure.
So we have an opportunity to review it,
Yeah,
work on that?
yeah, that's my point. If we get it back from her, that we're not officially submitting it until we get her informal comments back to us. So,
Will you arm wrestle over it?
Well, I don't think we've ever taken any action on the whole grant topic at all.
yeah, that's a good question on all the grants.
Well, on this one.
Yeah, no, I thought we had agreed that any grant that's gonna have a county name on it, the 3 of us would review before it
Absolutely.
was submitted. I mean, I kinda remember that. And of course I could.
So see, so the way I was treating it, it's a rough draft. It's still a rough draft when Christie gets it back to us, and then we decide what we're gonna do with it. That's how I was looking at
We
it.
as,
The board.
Not a problem with that.
And so we're gonna have to figure out how we wanna get it submitted by the 15th. And Christie's expecting us to email it to her at that point.
After
So we're gonna-
yesterday's meeting in the courtroom and the delay in the mail and those kind of things, I mean, I'm very leery about timing.
Yeah, it
So
is an
let's just
electronic
make sure
transfer.
Someone else may not be.
And we're gonna make sure she
someone
copies
else-
back, right, that she got
I'll finish.
it. Go ahead.
Someone else may not be as lenient as we were yesterday, that's all I'm trying
I
to say.
agree.
and you're saying the deadline is the 15th?
That's what Christie wants it in her hand.
You don't meet before then.
Pardon? No, we would not be meeting
I know, that's
prior
my
to the
point,
15th.
is we gotta figure out how we're gonna handle it.
There was some interesting numbers come up while we were putting all that together. One of them that I thought was the amount of fuel sold from '08 to last year, I think, had doubled, without anybody really pushing the facility out there.
Begin to
So
grow,
it's like, yeah.
more people there.
And if we push it forward and have this jet fuel and it can really take off.
Good point.
So let's work a
Wow.
process where we're talking about it.
Okay, we catch it.
How do we want it?
Well, how about, just a suggestion, and I'll let our chairman decide how we really would like to handle it, just a suggestion of, how about once we get it back from Christie, Meredith could send it to the 3 of us, we could send our comments back to Meredith, and I trust Meredith to say, whoa, there's enough here that we probably ought to call a special meeting. Or, you know, the comments back from us are, you know, just clean up stuff and,
Or Christie's comments.
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, our comments back, because we already have Christie's, once we
Right.
look at it, we're just looking at it, you know. The 3 of us may just say, looks great, send it on.
We didn't do that with the landfill grant. So I guess the point is we
Probably ought to
We gotta be
tighten up our
consistent.
process.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
that's kind of, we're refining as we go along,
I
yeah.
agree.
Unless
Yeah,
we devote and say, you guys go do it and we trust you, I mean, that's can be a possibility.
And I'm
as well.
okay with that too. I mean, we're all working
It is
for
a
the
process.
same, the benefit of everybody, you know, so I'm not gonna argue with it. I'm not gonna have any more insight than the professionals would have.
I suppose
Thanks for that.
for a legalistic approach, we could put it on the agenda for our special meeting tomorrow at 3. We'd still have a 24-hour notice. Vote to approve
Tomorrow at 3?
for hiring a
That's
VSO
today.
officer.
That's
Or
today.
today, sorry.
That's
Looking-
today.
Yeah,
Or we,
I
you
mean,
know,
tomorrow
looking right
there's,
there.
Yeah, okay.
Call it tomorrow. So,
we,
tomorrow there's the
so
workshop.
maybe, pardon? So maybe a special meeting would be in order. I agree, we've probably been remiss with the landfill grant.
Yeah.
And it's okay, I mean, we can, it's our process, and so if we decide we're gonna, on a grant, we can say, all right, we've looked at it, we've all agreed this is good, it's going in the right direction, we can vote at that time, clean it up and submit it.
Well, I think if Cheryl Trent was here, she'd hand us a little rabbit, because we're off on a rabbit trip.
Yeah.
Because I think the discussion about grant approval is irrespective
Of
of
this.
Right.
this particular one. This happens to be the catalyst that's getting us talking.
So that's what I'm asking, so what do we wanna do now?
Well, that's right. What do we want to do on this one, and then we can work out procedure on the forward.
When do you expect to have it back from Cindy Howard?
No, it's
Christie.
Christie.
Christie's got me.
I did
going.
this. She said she
You're on
would,
the other page.
she said she's, busy next week with the committee, and she's gonna take Monday and Tuesday and put some time in it, and then she wants me to talk to her Wednesday, and we'll get it back probably then. But it could be, it's her time. I could get a hold of her and see if she's got a better handle on her schedule now. That was a couple weeks
I
ago.
certainly don't want to jeopardize getting it in on the timeframe that she's requested.
And I really wanna get her input, cause, let me explain the process she explained to me. This is not the same as the other grants where it's, hearings and everybody gets a vote and blah, blah, blah. It's their internal staff that takes all the requests, and usually they're in the $34,000 to $70,000 range, although they go as high as 150 or more. And so they talk and they look at the goods and they ask Clint what he thinks, he asks you, and they all just barter it back and forth. Then I said, well, I don't wanna be stuck. If we ask for, she said, how much, I asked her, how much should we go for, and she said, half. And I told her the amount that we were dealing with, a couple $100,000. And she said, ask for half. And because you've got a matching grant, funds for it. And then I said, well, I don't wanna have that be a yes or no, and then we're out of luck. And she said, well, it won't be, and that's why she said she wants to keep talking to us. Because I told her we would take a lesser amount, and they can barter then whether there's a need in Cripple Creek for a $50,000 study.
Understand.
So that's the process, and so they,
Pare down their
right,
requirements
right.
if we didn't have.
And they're gonna do that over the next couple of weeks. And they wanna, well, maybe even a little more than that, because she said, did you ever talk to her, Meredith? When are they gonna grant the money for this?
That, I don't know, I was trying to look that up, and I haven't kind of.
She mentioned, June to me. So.
Oh, yeah, June 1st.
First or the middle of June or whatever. I'll clarify that.
With you for a good few months.
But anyway, the issue then is how, without having another publication, it's our process, so how do we wanna do this particular one now?
Well, if we could buy a couple of days and not submit it until after the 20th, then we could deal with it on the 20th at our meeting.
Yeah,
Well,
what day of the week is the 20th?
that's a Wednesday. And she has indicated to you she'd like it on Monday.
Well, she wants it the 15th, which is Friday.
So that's 5 days, and she may not want to.
She may not wanna do that because they're adamant with the other people applying for these things.
We need to live within their deadline, that's their game.
Well, let's get it back from her, and then we'll maybe select a date for a special meeting.
I agree.
We could do that, we could decide.
I agree.
Good.
This is important and we need to do it.
Yeah, I don't think the reasoning that we did not take formal action on the landfill grant gives us leeway to say, well, we don't need to take official action on this one either. Somewhere we're
No, I'm not
gonna
saying
start
that.
taking official action, so I would be fine with a special
You
date.
did, vote on the landfill grant
We
in
did.
Wetmore.
Oh, down in Wetmore. Okay.
But see, then we let it go take its own process,
We never
which is what I
reviewed it.
that can be our process if we make it so.
The timeline for one was
Right.
the reason for that. It
And
wasn't the lack.
I'm not sure that would be a good process. I think we need to look at the finished grant.
See, and that's the whole problem here. We're always gonna be up against that wall then, because we'll always submit it and get feedback, it depends on our timing. So, we either come up with a special case where we call a special meeting every time, that's okay, or we do it.
Excuse me, I made an interruption. Or we get get these done in a timely manner, and we're not in a rush at the end. That's what I prefer, and that's basically what I wrote in our agreement yesterday.
Yeah.
Right, Ms. Meredith? I mean,
Yes,
it's
I'd rather
not-
not
we
just
knew
submit a
about
grant.
this
She
long
Well,
enough, and we
sure we
should have
did.
this done
Well, but
earlier.
that's my point, though. We knew plenty, but she asked me to get it to her on the 8th. That was her timeline to us. And we started this a month ago. We started discussing it, and we started working with Christie. And so she can drive, see, my point is, even the recipient can drive our need for a special meeting, if that's what we want to do.
Right, but if we're more diligent and work within a reasonable
I agree.
time frame, we should not ever be in a, gotta do it right this second. I mean, that was, this thing we approved yesterday, that was in there 3 or 4 times, that we're not gonna be
Yeah.
pressured into a last minute deal. I mean, it's inappropriate for everybody. Whoever the organization do a sloppy job, we won't review it as well as we should. It'll quickly be slapped out, and it
No, no.
doesn't do anybody the right, it
I agree.
doesn't serve anybody properly.
Well, and in this case, and we don't need to harp on it, but, I mean, we didn't even start this grant process for the
Down a little road here.
Well, we had,
airport till last week, correct? What day was that?
Yeah,
Because we went to the airport, that didn't happen, and then it was,
I'll get the rabbit out here in a minute, but I'm gonna point out one more time, Meredith came on in the middle of this, and Brenda was started with it, and we started to go down that process. I asked Brenda to get us the stuff for these guys to understand it, and we started dealing with it 6 weeks ago. And so we got caught up in the middle of a couple things, so that happens. But I agree, your point is correct, do it in time.
Fine. Okay,
Stuff
but this
happens.
one is an anomaly. We're not gonna let this grant go away by not meeting to discuss it.
Right.
So if we have to change the procedure now that we're establishing for the future, let's get it done. That's my feeling.
I agree. Okay, so what are we gonna do? We're gonna have a special meeting when we get it back from Christie.
you say Cindy, I'm gonna hold.
I didn't say Cindy. Cindy's sitting there. I can
I'm
see Cindy.
teasing you.
Yeah,
Cindy just signed off on it.
It's gonna be Christie.
I'm a
Christie.
yeah. And then when Miss Howard does come to the table, we'll start calling her Christie.
We'll call her
I
Christie
think
Doon,
we have a plan.
Cindy Doon.
And again, Meredith, thanks so much for what you did to get
I
this
think we're
done
good.
as quickly as you did.
I think she did very well.
She's not done yet.
Okay, so before I leave,
Yes, sir.
next month, this time, our meetings out there,
April, yes.
April, okay.
Yep.
Out where?
Yep.
17th?
We're having a BOCC meeting at the airport?
You voted on it, sir.
Yep.
Yeah.
17th.
And you wanted to be there. 'cause
Actually, you might have made the motion, come to think of it.
I thought you
Love
promised to wake
motion.
me up before I vote.
Therefore, you will bring the apple fritters. You're gonna bring the apple
I'll
fritters.
pick you up if you
Yeah.
would like.
I am delighted to go to the airport. I love the airport. I'm just,
We
and I'm sure it's on my
modified our
calendar
schedule.
and
Well, I just wanted to make sure I had the right.
Yeah, April 17th,
Okay.
9 o'clock,
April what?
It's the mid-month.
mid-month, 17th.
Oh.
You were
I
thinking it
do.
was some other
I
day?
was thinking it was the first of
Oh,
the
yeah,
month. like-
no, it's mid-month.
Well,
BOCC.
you're gonna jump the gun. Now, this is just a special meeting, so you don't have to do your reports.
Well, we
It's
just want to make
BOCC
sure we're
meeting.
prepped and have the coffee on and have some.
and the donuts.
Fix the
chef-
pothole and
Chef will
dry
be
it.
taking orders on eggs. I got it.
Yeah.
Maybe have law enforcement in case we have to escort somebody out of the meeting.
If it's gonna be that rough.
That's why we're having it out there.
There were all those illegal grows are going on.
The commissioners spoke to Road and Bridge Supervisor about taking the sheriff's vehicles that we're decommissioning down to the county shop and have the decals and the light bars and cages, whatever else needs to be taken out of them. Gary agreed to do that. Said we'd like to get it done in somewhat of a timely manner, primarily before spring rush hits the county shop. So as soon as Sheriff Byerly gets his radios out, then we'll make arrangements to get them down to the county shop.
Fantastic.
And after that's done, then I would guess we may ask you to get them from the county shop.
Yeah,
for
Sure, that's no
Fair
problem.
enough.
I did want to say thank you to you guys for that.
Great to work for everybody.
And we will certainly have our rules in place and our insurance in place before we give anybody a key to go anywhere. So.
Yeah, we probably ought to talk about that process. Now, the commissioners have not voted to authorize courtesy cars at the airport. No, that has not happened. So for the record, the commissioners agreed to send these vehicles down there
Okay,
versus letting them sit somewhere else and somebody wanting to lay claim to them. But I did not vote
No.
to authorize the courtesy cars.
We wanna make sure they're.
That's a whole other
cars,
process.
and that's what's going
So
on
kind of
now.
put that on the Wetmore meeting, the next meeting, so that we can discuss it, vote on it.
Sure.
And then, you'll be ready to go once you get equipped
Get
and
ready.
all that kind of stuff. So does that make sense?
Yep.
Not to me, it doesn't, and I will explain why.
Go ahead.
I think the airport has a lot of hoops to jump through before I would be comfortable in voting to authorize them to have courtesy cars.
Because of the,
Okay.
And I'm not
Process.
sure that can happen by the Wetmore meeting. It might, but, I mean, you have to have every question answered, every
so you want
insurance.
the rules and the insurance in place before
Right,
the actual
and how
vote.
you're gonna handle maintenance of these vehicles, who's gonna pay for that? Is there gonna be a fee for people to use the courtesy car? I mean, I'm not establishing your
Right,
rules,
right,
but I'm
right.
just suggesting the kind of
Yeah, it
things
has
that
to.
I would like to see. I'd like
And
to see.
I'm not saying you'd actually have to have a policy in place, pardon me for interrupting you there. But at least to say, we've talked to our insurance company, here's exactly how much it's gonna cost us, and this is what it's gonna cover, that kind of thing. I don't expect you to already have signed off on all that before we vote, because that'd be crazy to do all that, pay a premium, and we vote not to give, not to allow the process. But at least have all that information in front of us so we can say, okay, so now we understand
gotta handle it.
exactly what that courtesy car program is gonna look like. That's my opinion.
That's what I thought we were doing.
What
So-
kinds of things, insurance, maintenance, what other kinds of things would you like to see?
Expenses, fuel,
Geographical limits.
limit
Process, your rules, your
Yeah.
plan to go
Yeah.
and how you're gonna implement
Like the
these.
the
fences
process
within the
of
county.
checking out a car and returning it,
Okay,
where they're gonna be housed, where the keys are gonna be housed, how does somebody fly in and get a key, what's the form look like that they're gonna sign, a waiver, whatever that looks like. I think that needs to be a packet to come before the commissioners before I would vote to move forward with this.
Mhm.
Maybe you could put that on the April meeting at the airport.
And then again, I might have misspoken. If you believe you can have that by the Wetmore meeting in
I don't think there's any rush.
14 days,
It's done right.
Probably not.
but, and that might be appropriate to have it at our April meeting down at the airport, but that's,
I'm fine.
would be entirely up to you guys.
I'm just thinking we're getting into the time of year where
Gonna need it.
recreational flyers
Oh,
are
yeah,
coming
yeah.
in, so I'd like to
Absolutely.
do it sooner than later, but I don't, just like the grants, I don't wanna rush it through
Right.
just to get it done.
But like I said, I wanted you guys to know that we weren't gonna get them down there and keys out. We'll have all this
Got it.
stuff
Okay.
done.
So maybe I misunderstood what
We
you
have to
said.
have a procedure.
Yeah.
But you want it before you vote, so.
Right.
That steps it up a little bit,
Right.
so.
And I believe that's reasonable. If you don't, let's have that conversation. But, to ask us to vote to move forward with the courtesy cars and not know all that stuff, I think would be irresponsible of us.
Right.
All right.
And, if you just the big picture, you're gonna deal with the towns, you got a plan to get them, maybe even, working with you on how you're gonna advertise things. It's just a big picture, what you're gonna do.
Well, I think the first
And I already gave
decal we
them
might want to put
the,
on it is Silver West Airport.
Sure.
Courtesy car, so as it runs around town.
Right.
You can see that.
Sure.
by the way, Jackie pointed out to me yesterday, you have the signs already, but that parking lot, all you need is to put the post up, this is
Okay.
the Silver West Airport, where the parking lot is.
Yeah.
Where all the cars are right now. So, and then you decide where you're gonna, how you're gonna handle the fence, and is it gonna go around that, or is it gonna be where it is now, all that stuff, it's yours to manage.
But it's county property, right? It's not airport.
No, it's, she says that's airport property. It's county, that's what the airport is county property. That's That's how she put it.
The county owns the land, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
obviously,
So what you wanna manage, how much of that is in your boundaries is up to you, she said. You put a sign up there and you say Silver West Airport, turn in here and go through the gate. Do not park here where they're parking now, or you can have that be the parking lot and fence it in, she said. That's the point. Because what else is the county gonna do with it? It's
Well,
a common
but I mean,
right.
I thought part of the whole issue that came up was because Shannon had that issue.
But that's the point. It's under your control if you put the sign up, and she says, and then if you put the sign up, then you better make sure everybody's got them registered, because
Right.
Shannon will pull them out. See? If you wanna have a guy in a hangar that has a car that's expired and keeps it in the hangar, then so what?
So be it, yeah, but out there on the road.
Down the road is a different story.
I mean, my perspective is the county owns the land, but you guys manage that
That's right.
property.
It's not deeded to the airport, it's county property, and you guys manage the property, the airport.
Well, then where would that boundary stop?
Where you put it.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
Where
mean,
you
you're saying
put
we
it.
manage county property, but that could go.
Well, that's right, but right now it's the airport boundary as described by the fence that goes around it. And in this case, that fence doesn't include that little piece, but
Right.
it can, or it cannot. It can just be a sign, she said. It's still, you're not allowed to park there. Or you can say parking here and have it not fenced.
Right.
It's okay.
All right, so,
Yeah, I would think that, and that's a great question, is where does that managerial
Right.
boundary
yeah, it's not
lie?
airport. We thought we stopped at
Yeah.
airport property.
Right.
Yeah, and that was your responsibility because you own.
Well, now we're
that's yours.
saying, but there's,
So everything fenced out there that we would consider the airport,
Right.
in my opinion, would be under the management of your board.
right.
Correct.
If that management plan came up, let's say you want to drill a new commercial well, all right? As a commissioner, I'd say if you've got the money in your budget to do it, then that's a managerial thing. If you
Right.
don't, then I would expect you to be back in front of the commissioner saying, we need 25 grand to drill a well. That kind of thing. I think
Right. Right.
those
That's
would
right.
kind of sort
But this
themselves out.
this whole conversation started with what's outside of the fence.
Yeah. But that's the point.
Yes.
But
Okay, we'll put a sign up, that's all.
put the sign
All right.
up or
Yeah,
yes.
forget about it,
Yeah.
just move on, let's,
Then fence it if you want to.
I'm assuming it's outside of the fence because the public would had to be able to pull in there, public being the pilots or whoever, right? Wanted to drive down the road.
I assumed it
And
was
pull into
outside
that
the
parking
fence
lot.
because it was not ever
Under your-
designated airport property.
No.
And I don't agree with that.
No, I
think
don't
it
either,
is.
and what the reason it wasn't, Glenn, is because that's what the fence they paid for, and that's the fencing they put up. That is the airport ground if we want it. Do you want it or not? If you don't, if you say no, then fine, the people, it's gonna be a county, still county property.
Well, we'll put a sign up, but,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be a board discussion for you guys.
Yeah, you guys
to say,
decide if you want to.
From my perspective, they just didn't put a fence across there, right? So people could drive in. That would be my
Or
perspective.
walk in.
But,
my perspective was it's not designated
Yeah,
airport property,
right.
so the fence didn't go.
Right. See, and it doesn't the fence go all the way and then cut back in around the parking lot and then keep going, right? The parking lot is the only thing that really isn't fenced.
Right.
yes.
It's your parking lot, as far as we're concerned.
Go ahead, no, go
I'm gonna
ahead.
ask the question, why does it really matter?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well-
all county property. I recognize, there's no debate inside the fence, we're gonna let you manage it. We have vehicles, people park outside the fence, I know that. We had an issue with a squatter.
Right.
The sheriff took care of that, or planning and zoning took care of it. It's gone. If that problem comes up again, and the airport notices it, you're gonna notify us somewhere, someone, your planning and zoning, sheriff, somebody, and we'll solve it. I'm not sure I recognize why this is even an issue.
Yeah, it shouldn't be an issue, cause you, to me, Glenn, you wouldn't wanna have just any Joe drive in there and park there and go off and hike somewhere. And you'd like to control the traffic within the airport, I would think. You have it registered, know who's there.
I guess I have a mental block as to
Yeah.
the airport property, I feel is our responsibility. Outside of that fence is
Okay.
And if you see a squatter or another issue like we had before, you call somebody and say, hey, Sheriff.
If you don't want it in the side fence, you can move the fence.
See, and it makes sense to me that that would be part of the airport property if that's where pilots are gonna park. Or the public
yes.
to come down there and fly or go on a ride or whatever.
It's not that,
Whether or not it's literally fenced doesn't
it
matter.
doesn't matter
to
if it's
me,
fenced.
But to me, it would still be.
It's you can manage it.
And what would an adequate sign?
Wrap it up.
Move on.
I'm buying a bunny.
What would the sign have to
Yeah,
say?
buddy.
Well, we've already.
Silver
got the
West
sign.
Airport,
Oh, we have the sign.
park here
Okay,
if
so
you
just put it up.
whatever.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Gentlemen.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, gentlemen.
You're not, I guess
This
I'm the
too
one.
shall pass.
I guess I'm the one.
It's okay.
I'm the one.
It doesn't-
Walked, I guess.
It doesn't have to happen during the airport staff meeting, but we got to have these conversations and make decisions during these meetings. So unfortunately, it happened during the airport staff report.
I gotta tell
Christy,
you guys,
how are
it
you?
is a pleasure to see a board that is functional and works. You guys are fun to watch work with each other, and you're getting stuff done. From the old days that I'm familiar with, this is a dream. Keep going, you guys, you're doing
Appreciate
great.
it. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for that comment.
Stick around, watch us handle Cindy. You might have a different opinion.
For numerous reasons, I'd like to introduce Cindy Howard.
Thank you.
Office of
It's not
Emergency-
Cindy Doon,
Have
is it?
them introduced as
Cindy,
the
yeah.
new Christy,
Right.
and Christy
And who
Coleman
actually-
gets called Cindy a lot, and then there's
Yeah, I know.
Christy Doon, you gotta make it more
Too many
confusing.
Who
Christies
is
in it.
actually regularly scheduled to have a staff report. Don't ask me why I went on.
I started to watch the meeting to
Yeah.
see that
I
blurb and I missed
emailed
it.
Cindy yesterday and apologized for my total brain freeze and out of sight, out of mind with me. And I just saw you last week because we did a little tour, but we were trying to think, and I didn't go back and look at the minutes, but I don't think you were at the staff report.
I think I was thinking
You were
it was
last
in-
month.
Oh, you
Yeah,
did?
I was
You
here last month,
Okay.
January,
Yeah.
there wasn't
Yeah, you were
one.
here.
December, I think I made the
See you, man.
staff report, but I missed the CES meeting
Yeah.
when my dad died, so.
Yeah.
Does that
Well,
mess up the second half of my December? But yeah, and then I missed you in January, but that's your fault, not mine.
So my apologies.
Oh, no worries, I don't know what I missed, but yeah,
Yeah.
my ears weren't burning.
Good, good.
Um,
Okay, let's get.
I did, send my report in a couple times to Meredith, and I think I finally got it fixed, but I was using her old email address that didn't get updated, so.
Right.
That was a little late too, which probably added to the confusion, and I could have done the same thing with last month's report for all I know.
Okay, good. And we had just a brief conversation. You were thinking about resubmitting for coroner's vehicle
I can do that
to
under the
try it,
Homeland,
or
yeah, the Homeland Security grant. I was in the FEMA website looking at equipment. Kit and Beth have both been asking questions too. So the process I've usually followed with Homeland Security, because it's the 2019 grant, but we wouldn't be spending anything we get till 20. So usually we put in for projects, and then whatever sticks, we come back with a county grant form and put it in the budget request for 2020. If it was something that, say Shannon or somebody was getting, or the coroner's vehicle, if we could fast track it, it doesn't matter to me what year it's spent in, but I think from Donna's perspective, it's easier to address it as a 2020 budget issue if it's approved. We normally don't get approval to spend any of that till like November anyway, and it's so close to the new year. So I can put in for that one.
well, what if the commissioners came up with the money to get him a vehicle, let's say in October, and then we find out we get that grant later, then can we reimburse the county for the expense of that vehicle? It's gotta be a direct expense.
Yeah, you can't spend it before you get approval, and that's what we've been holding off on the sheriff's office fence for, because we needed both state approval and federal
Is that a
approval.
DOLA grant? What is it?
No, it's Homeland Security. So it's a pass-through from FEMA to the state down to the South region, and then the South region is our fiscal agent. So we have to follow our purchasing policies or Pueblo County's purchasing policies, whichever are stricter of the two, which usually means Pueblo County. But yeah, if we knew you had some money and this thing got approved and Larissa said you can go ahead and spend it in November or whatever,
Right.
then, you know,
But we'd have
we
to
could
get
do
the
it.
approval notice.
It doesn't
first.
matter to me if we pushed it into the next year's budget, because you'd be the ones amending the budget. So I did put in for the coroner's vehicle last year, and I got a lot of pushback. It looks like if I call it a church truck that will hold a coffin, because really FEMA has mass casualty vehicles, and so, you know, we said, well, we don't even have a sole casualty vehicle in Custer County, but Fremont County, a year ago, 2 years ago, they got a big refrigerated truck for a mass casualty vehicle. It's a South Region asset, and like we've got the light tower 1 year, and so that's deployable. So it meets the deployable. I think it would meet the FEMA equipment guideline as a church truck, and the concern at the South Region last year was we're setting a precedent. Now every coroner is going to want a new vehicle. We sort of already set that precedent because every emergency manager wants a new vehicle, and Fremont's getting a new vehicle this year. Pueblo County got a vehicle for the dive team, and if you don't consider that a recovery vehicle, I don't think they've saved anyone out of Pueblo Reservoir lately.
Well, how do coroners get vehicles normally?
I think the county
County
pays
buys
for
it, period, from out of general fund kind of stuff.
And Art had a nice quote. It was based off of the Fremont County coroner's vehicle.
I think just buy a regular vehicle, they don't have to buy a hearse or anything like that. I mean, I just don't know. Can it?
I haven't looked into any specific specs yet on what a church truck is.
I'm surprised they're
Larissa,
even entertaining it.
it just, you know, like even when Randy Keller, the funeral home, when he comes up, he's got a minivan, you know,
Yeah, I know
because
that.
they don't use hearses anymore. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't
Okay.
be more than,
I mean,
you know, a four-wheel drive something where it's not the back
body
of
could fit in.
a pickup. There's some other ideas, so I sent out an email and we've been brainstorming, and not that we want to get into the sheltering business, but the large animal and small animal toys are one option. Kit asked if they could do a water tender, and I found foam trucks, but it doesn't really meet, you know, if you're looking at probably not spending it till 2020 anyway, it doesn't mean a fast turnaround for fire. It does cover PPE, so if we decided we wanted, you know, wildland fire gear in all our road and bridge trucks and stuff.
Personal protection
Yeah.
equipment.
Personal protection. Got it.
So, you know, if the deputies and the road and bridge and folks wanted to start getting, you know, the fire rated shirts and pants and gloves and, you know, wildland gear, fire shelter. I know the CDOT guys carry PPE with them, and they carry Abbey gear and a bunch of other stuff, so it would cover some of those kinds of things. The deadline for this is March 28th at midnight, so, you know, it'll be that week we'll get it submitted, and then we go to the South Region, and
So who's writing that grant?
it's a one-page form. I've sent it out. You have to get your quotes, and I've sent it out to everybody. Vernon was looking at satellite phones, and, you know, they potentially buy the phone, but they wouldn't pay the program, you know, the monthly service fee or anything after the first year. So everybody's got the form, and in a typical year, they'll all send me back their forms, and we kind of flush it out beforehand. And then it'll go to the South Region, and we'll all do grant scoring matrices, and we'll get one vote per county, score them, and we don't recuse ourselves as a county. Everybody scores the project. So Pueblo County last year got bomb suits, I think they got, and there's not a lot of money. We're talking about between 5 counties, we're maybe splitting 160 grand between us. But if we don't fight for it, Pueblo County gets the bulk of it, and beyond them, Fremont County's always.
And so this
done
is
really well.
a multi-representative grant. All these entities can put in their input request to be included in the grant.
Anybody in the county that would meet, so I sent it out I copied Gwen just because of the animal stuff. I sent it to Beth, to Alyssa, to Kit, to Ruth Roper for Wetmore Fire, and then to like our MRC and Posse folks and certain. So typically, I copied Art, but I already know what Art wants.
Ambulance is not part of that.
Yeah, well, Beth looked hard. at it yesterday. It really is more of your PPE, cots, and decontamination kind of.
So that's not
health
this
stuff.
grant that you've got here, is it?
Well,
got it
it's, so
listed
it's
here?
so the Homeland Security one. That's the first
That's
one.
the one
It's
you're-
not in yet. So the 2018, we're ready to move forward.
This is it.
Yeah.
Okay, I
So the
lost you.
2019 is the one I've got that we're talking about. Yeah. And then the 2018, we got the security fence, and we got through the FEMA approval, the federal approval on the first pass. So we're good on that security fence for the sheriff's office. I had to battle that one because it wasn't mobile and deployable, but it was a security need. I mean, there were a lot of issues there.
Now, can I back up a little on the Homeland grant? Regional, is that,
We're part of the South region, Pueblo,
Okay.
Fremont.
and
Fort
so our
Lauderdale, Los
assets would have to
Angeles.
be deployable within that region, or no?
They can be. So we have that light tower, and last year I got on the phone with the Spring Fire and asked John Decker to get the light tower down to Levita.
So is
We
there
had
a
in
limit on the amount? It doesn't, you don't say it here, you can ask for the sky and get it?
Yeah, you could ask for the sky and not get it.
Right.
That last year, the grant was right around the 200 mark, and Larissa's salary takes up a big chunk of that, which is mandated into the grant. And so we'll probably be splitting about 160,000 between 5 counties. So it's not a big chunk of change. But projects like generators, light towers, PPE, something the region doesn't have yet, if we decided to go get some stainless steel done cat cages and start developing something like that.
So coroner's vehicle is 50K or something, let's say.
I'd have to look at the bid. I think it was about 40,000, the one that
Right,
he wanted.
so if you're trying to compete with other counties and yourself, if you're gonna ask for a bunch of PPE and everything else, you need to narrow it down, don't you? What are you doing?
So, yeah, we need to come up with ideas, and then when we take them to the South region, we might want to narrow them down all ourselves, but we also don't want to throw out every other idea and just go for a coroner's
Right.
vehicle, and then they
Right.
say, no way, we're
That's
not
right.
supporting that one.
Right, then you're.
And then we have nothing.
Yeah.
So now you're kinda up against a wall, cause you got 28 that's coming up pretty quick.
Well, we've been talking about it at the CES meetings for months,
Okay.
and this is just this form doesn't go to FEMA, it's a one-page form that goes to Larissa.
I see.
Our next CES meeting is in Westcliff on March 14th, so we'll be talking about it here. The fact that it's in Westcliff and Larissa's here, she's the grants coordinator, I can let, Kit and Shannon and Beth and anybody who thinks they might have a project come talk to Larissa and see. We did run in with Posse. You can't order law enforcement equipment, so some of the things, Posse still has some money on the 2017 grant. They haven't spent because they don't know how to spend it. Every time they go to Larissa, she's like, you can't buy that. But what they did was, 2 commanders ago, they said, we have a very specific list of equipment we want to buy. It was approved, and then,
So you said that meeting's on the 14th,
is that Thursday?
Yeah.
14th, yes.
We'll be gone.
we'll be gone,
It's
but
here in the SAR building, yeah. I
4:30?
think it starts at 1.
Oh,
1 to 4.
Yeah, we'll be in a meeting up in Salida,
Okay.
Upper Arkansas.
Okay, well, I can still get, somebody from the fire station, and I'm sure Chris will be there, because Chris is my alternate regent, Chris Barr, on the South region, so that he can come in and help me fight for this grant money. So anyway, yeah, it's not a big grant, it's not a hard issue, it's just trying to fight for our share,
Right.
and hopefully.
Would it
come
be
up with-
reasonable ever to consider submitting in that grant, I don't know the actual name of these, portable electronic highway signs?
The bearable messaging boards.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
who knew?
Yeah.
You know,
That'd be-
last year we
We
made
did,
adjustment
I had
called the
some quotes,
CDOT.
I had some quotes because we put those in for, the recovery stuff. We asked the state as part of Junk and Fire recovery to get us some. No, I think variable message.
You know, it's a
boards
good
are
idea
good
just for
idea.
the county to have one, 'cause we always have a road problem somewhere.
VMS, variable message
Mhm.
signs, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll check the FEMA guidance.
Who knew?
Would you tolerate a question that's probably borders on being an ignorant question, but I just don't know the answer, so I'm gonna ask you.
Boy, I wish I had come back for that one. I'm just not quick.
Does it have any other kind?
No such
And it's about fire reimbursement.
Uh-huh.
Were we eligible for reimbursed funds from the
The
last
Jenkins
fire?
fire?
No, the one prior to, or after that, small fire out
The
here.
Adobe
A
fire.
little
Adobe.
The Adobe fire?
We
The
didn't,
county was not.
okay.
Wet Mountain Fire Protection District would have been. I remember on July 4th talking to some of the firemen that told me I better start tracking costs for reimbursement.
Yeah.
And I reminded them I worked for the county, not for Wet Mountain Fire Protection District. And so Terry Munson picked up that and she submitted.
And do you know if they got reimbursed or
I
did they?
don't know.
Okay. So
Do
then
you
let's
know?
go back.
They did.
They got reimbursed. Okay.
Go back up the calendar then, and
Okay.
obviously the Junkins fire.
The Jenkins fire, the only thing that Joe Loviando said that we might have been eligible for reimbursement on would have been the county road and bridge tenders. I don't know if county road and bridge ever submitted anything, and we've had about 3 changes in staffing over there. Roger said at the CES meeting he thought that they were reimbursed. But we also had an issue at which Meredith helped clean up with the surf equipment. The Wet Mountain Fire Protection District had listed all of the county equipment under their surf agreement, so it's also possible that Wet Mountain Fire Protection District could have been reimbursed for county equipment during the Jenkins fire. I don't see any of that, and in other counties, it's the finance staff that does all this. In Custer County, you know, I do my portion, road and bridge, fire. So we did talk about at the last CES meeting, trying to make our required resource mobilization drill be half resource mob drill, and then half with all the finance people, so that, you know, Ruth and Terry and whoever's gonna be working that, find that out. And Joe Loviando said it would be too late for, you know, me to really go through the PFPC to see if they got reimbursed. But I don't know, cause that would have been Danny there at the time. And I just assumed, you know, they were doing it all. I knew Joe came day one of the fire, Joe signed surf agreements, handwritten surf agreements. And I think that's how we ended up with 2 sets. There were no surf agreements, so Joe wrote them with Road and Bridge. And then later we found out that they were all submitted under Wet Mountain Fire. And then we had a conflict that they were in both. So they're going to a new online system. We keep hearing it's gonna roll out in April. It's been postponed a couple times. But all the surf agreements are now gonna require VIN numbers, and there won't be any possibility of duplication. But then if you reseat like a water tender or an ambulance, you have to go through a process of changing the VIN number. And the old forms were good for 3 years, they'll now be 1 year at a time. But I didn't even come up with on the county side of time in on the equation. I came up with somewhere around $30,000, and that was shelterings and volunteer hours at $25 an hour, and we only spent like maybe a couple $1,000s out of pocket besides the personnel. So I didn't have enough to reimburse to go after, because if I did go after that money, it would have been possible that they would come back and said, you know, you have a cost share here, and actually you paid so very little on this fire, maybe your cost share should be more. So I was also concerned they'd come back and say, you know, you guys owe $150,000. You know, and part of what happened with the Jenkins fire that was unusual was they, you know, it started in the middle of the night, we got on scene, we did a delegation of authority by like noon, but they backed it up to 6 a.m. So the feds started picking up almost all those costs from 6 a.m. on. So that probably saved us there, because I think that fire ended up being about $14.5 million. I know it jumped made a higher number. And what they're saying they're going to do in the future is sit down with the policy group and start having these cost share discussions earlier. So I hope that doesn't happen, but we'll see.
Well, I guess my question to you would be, in your opinion, our process, particularly from the county's perspective, is it clean, clear, and concise of how this all is going to work? Okay. I didn't feel it was either.
It's not.
Do you think we need to get all the players together and say, this is who's gonna be responsible for submitting
Yeah, and it probably,
requests. I mean, it's,
should probably be tied to the logistics section and be in the emergency operations plan. The problem is it's not even clear, concise at the state level or the federal level, and so much varies. But I do think, yeah, I think I don't have a position of authority where I can go to Sherry at Road and Bridge and say, you have to do this. I can
Right.
say, you know, let's work together, this
Right.
is what needs to be done.
right,
And it needs to sort of be finance driven. We also have the issue, you know, as we get into, you know, comp time, overtime, all that, bonuses. So overtime on the county would be a reimbursable expense. Anybody that's taking comp time, that's the county's donation. So, you know, you work the fire in October, you take 3 weeks off in May, you can't reimburse comp time. And what they did in the spring fire was North Carolina County gave all the employees who worked all that overtime, they gave them bonuses. And those bonuses aren't gonna be reimbursable
Right.
either. So you had no comp time, you were an exempt employee, you got a.
So what are you thinking, Tom?
well, I think we need to have a big workshop, big round table, sit everybody down and say, okay, I'll use public health since she's here for an example. We go through an event, and so I think it needs to be articulated, okay, public health. Here's the question, are you going to be responsible for your own financial reporting, or do you expect the county to
Who's
do
in
that?
charge?
And if so, then who in the county is gonna do that? Does it fall on emergency manager? Does it fall on our finance person? Who's gonna do that? See?
Yeah.
So I just think that conversation needs to be had with every entity at the table. I get,
Yeah, it's clear
I'll
as
be
mud right now.
yeah, I'll be the first to admit, man, my head starts swimming in those CES meetings.
Yeah.
And I can't keep it all sorted out.
Yeah.
I can barely follow the gist of the agenda, not that there's anything wrong with it. I just struggle trying to sort out who is what
Who's the
player in
lead?
what arena. So, it's been a source of frustration for me from day one that, and you and I've had this conversation, we keep talking about things we need to do, and I haven't seen us sit down and get together and do any of those really as a big group. Radios being a good example, or did everybody buy in that these are exactly the radios we're gonna buy countywide or not?
Yep.
And if not, why not? Okay, there might be legitimate reasons, but I just think we need to have that round table where everybody states their case and then decisions are made.
And I've asked a few times, you know, for some input on changing the agenda. I mean, because it's really, you know, if we want to make it project specific, you know, it's about getting people to the table and communicating
Right.
too, and meeting our training plans. If we come and we just work on projects, you know, we're going to.
So what is it, Cindy? Who's the lead dog on the
On
scene?
finance?
No, the whole process. Do we just, guys that volunteered to get together and they sit around the table and they decide, you'll do
So
this, you'll do
the
this?
Custer
Who leads it?
Emergency Services, I wouldn't even call it a board. Custer Emergency Services is supposed to be a liaison to share information. It's a multi-agency coordination meeting so that the agencies are working together. They're not just out going down doing their own things and nobody else knows about it or they get blindsided. So that's sort of the reporting format. The LEPC aspect of it is the Local Emergency Preparedness Council. We tried to double ours so we don't have 2 separate meetings, but that's the hazmat stuff. We have to sit down as agencies and talk together and occasionally touch on hazmat incidents and hazmat aspects, which is pretty hard on the pushback here. Everybody has their own grant deliverables. I think the ones that are hit hardest are public health, the clinic, EMS, and emergency management for actually having to do these various different trainings and so a lot of that, you know. So I'm the chair
Of the joint organization or just of the
of the
CES?
of the CES LEPC.
And everything you're showing us here, these grants are under your purview, not the joint group, is that right?
The Homeland Security grants that you're seeing here are South Region Emergency Management grants.
And who's managing that? You?
The grant or the,
Or, yeah,
or the,
process our work, this is just our input to those, is that what?
I'm just reporting to you where we're spending money here. This is just an ongoing report. These are 3 open grants, or they will be. I just closed 2016, 2019 is about to open. The South region is the 5 counties.
So you're speaking as a 5-county person when you're presenting these to us.
Right, so there's 2 5-county committees. You know, this is government. Can we be efficient?
Absolutely.
So we have the South Region Homeland Security Council, or whatever its name is,
Okay.
which Larissa Orendolf.
Okay, I don't care about that.
Okay,
Well,
she chairs it.
I just wanna
We have the
understand
South
process.
Region Emergency Management, which Christy Coleman from the state chairs,
Mhm.
because they give us money, so that's when she gets
So
to
that's
come
all
tell
of
us
the
what
home-
we have to do for that money.
Homeland Security stuff, the RSG grant, whose is that?
The Ready, Set, Go grant is mine.
Oh, that's a Custer County.
That's a
run-
Custer
run
County
only.
grant.
Okay, just wanna make sure.
It's not tied to Homeland
Right.
Security at all.
Alright.
It's through the International Association of Fire
Okay.
Chiefs. It's federal money,
Okay,
and the public health wasn't tied to it at all, the one that, we closed out in Greenwood.
so Tom brings up a good point, we kinda wanna get a big picture view of who's doing what to who, and are we buying similar stuff or whatever that we wanna help sponsor. I mean, from county point of view, I just wanna know what you want from us.
I'm not asking for anything from
Well-
you. It started out here
I know, I'm just-
that finance
so-
was clear as mud,
so, but
and then
if-
we went to the CES meetings in the format, and then we jumped over to the grants.
Okay.
So we're talking 3
All right,
things
right,
here.
all right.
I'm not sure.
Let's keep her focused.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well,
I'm not
my
asking
point
for anything.
was to ask your input and your opinion about, do we need to get
Right.
that done?
We
If we
need,
do, then I think it's incumbent on commissioners to make that happen.
I think, and yeah, I agree that we need at the county level, it would be nice to include fire so they know what they're doing, and EMS, but we need to work on the finance reimbursement piece and do the best job we can. Meredith and I worked a lot on it. We went back through the Duckett fire, and the Office of Emergency Management signed some reimbursement forms, and money came in on the Duckett fire. And when I was looking at that to see how that process was done, you know, Christy Coleman was signing under penalty of perjury, and I told Meredith, I won't do that. I may submit the forms, but, you know, it'll be
we going with this then?
other people. We need, you
we
wanna,
need to-
we can put it on the
can
CES agenda and,
I'd like to put that on the agenda, not to do it during a CES meeting,
yeah, tie
but
it to
to have
that
a
workshop.
conversation there, right?
Okay.
And then say,
Have a conversation and then go to the.
Right.
And we have to do the workshop for resource mode, so we talked about
Okay.
doing resource mode workshop like maybe in the morning, followed by the finance part. So my ask from that would be is that you guys back me up and get people to the table from the county.
Right.
That they actually
Okay.
attend, because I can't,
Right.
I,
and hey, we
I can
can't
ask
be
now.
telling them either, but we can certainly say, this is what we're trying to do. If you
Yeah.
want a seat at that table and be part of that conversation,
Yeah.
we'd like to have you there.
yeah. But at the end of the day, you sign their paychecks, and so if the final decision is gonna be that, you know, that Paula's doing it for the sheriff's department, and,
Right.
and Sherry's doing it for Road and Bridge, and I'm doing it for, you know, OEM, and Alyssa's got staff that's covering MRC and
Terry's
any,
doing the fire, whatever,
Yeah.
that just, to me, that needs to be defined.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter
probably
what the
some sort of
names
an
are
org
to
chart
me,
and a plan, and.
but
Mhm.
I just think we need to get that firmed up.
And I got the draft finance plan done in Q4, but I told Christy it's, you know, it still needs work. I sent her a draft as the grant deliverable, but it's still a work in progress. There's a lot to it. And because there's so many different pots of money and different rules depending on which pot of money you're in. So we'll throw that on the agenda for, it'll be the April meeting because we're doing that training at the March meeting.
That'll work fine, because we're committed on the March.
Okay.
Okay, so
Well,
I
thank
got a
you.
couple of questions on the RSG grant, the
Uh-huh.
reset grant, just for information. So how is that handled? I see that KC Wood Products out of Fluorescent got the contract.
Mhm.
Who granted that? Who made the selection?
So
How was
we
that
did-
process made?
We did 2 site tours. I was working with Art Collaborative. We had a really bad snow day the first day, so we did a second site tour, extended the RFP. We had 10 contractors come. We had 6 submit bids, and KC Wood Products was low bid at $1,300 an acre, and the next 2 that bid included the vendor you're talking about, and they were $300 an acre higher. So then Arc Collaborative presented all 3 bids to Jen Dietz at the International Association of Fire Chiefs, and Jen had the final say. So Arc recommended KC Wood Products, and IAFC
So I'm
approved it.
trying to get a handle on who the authority is. Is it?
The authority is the grantor, the International Association.
No. We applied for a grant, we got the grant, and we spend the money. I'm wondering who's managing that for the county. Was it
Me
you?
and these 3 notebooks.
That's what I. Okay. And then we had contractors bid countywide and other places. I don't care about it. Yes, I'm just looking at the process. Okay, and then I see here also that Claudia Morris, who keeps complaining about it, thinks it's her road. So what happened there, and what's going on?
We're not working on Claudia's road, we're working above it.
It's not Claudia's road, isn't it? The county road.
No, I'm sorry. We're not working on Bunker Hill Road at all, we're mostly working on Sugar
So
Loaf.
what's she complaining?
Because we needed access to the bottom of the lots, and the vendor drove down to see, that's how you get in
Is this a
to the
recent
bottom
thing?
of Chris Works.
Yeah.
He drove the road, she came out and.
Just recently.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is, I
Yeah, a
want to
week
make,
ago Monday.
I got the same complaint. I'm just wondering if this is what this is referring to. That's
Oh,
the issue.
yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, that issue's been dealt with.
Yeah, I
We
know.
documented it. She sent a couple emails. Tom and I went out and had a visit with
Yeah.
her. Buck told me to wear my body camera next time I go out.
Yeah, and I got a separate call, unbeknownst to that you guys were out there already. So I'm just wondering how this was.
And your call was pertaining to?
Same thing. Chris Work called me and said Claudia's at it again, because I've been working with Chris before in the past with
okay.
Claudia on other things out there.
Yeah. I think.
And we got it all resolved.
I think the bottom line is it's a neighbor dispute between 2 neighbors, and she just had something else to complain about. She was very nice and cordial the day Tom and I were out there.
Yeah, that's what Tom told me.
But, that's why I sent you the emails
Okay.
to document the emails in case it came back up again. But yeah, so,
Okay, good. I just.
and then, that's really where I've been spending the bulk of the time, this last week and a half, on the fire mitigation grant. I spoke to Jen Dietz at Ready, Set, Go yesterday. We got an extension through March 31st. It looks like they're going to extend us through April 30th. The map that I sent you, the red parcels were all the ones we're working. The yellow ones were ones that I'm trying to get a procurement to proceed into. And then there was a couple blue ones that are maybes. I did submit a second procurement order yesterday, because if I don't have that approval first before I spend money, then I'm out of luck, I won't get reimbursed. Jen's really happy with what we're doing. Some other folks on their Ready, Set, Go grants aren't using all their money, so we'll probably not only get an extension in time, but a little bit more money. So I have, I'm trying to meet, our original scope of work was 15 homes and 50 acres. Right now we're at 9 homes and 34 acres. We're trying to add to that.
Is that grant a matching grant, or is that?
The original budget we submitted was, they were gonna give us 50. 5,000 was coming from PILT funds, and 5,000 is considered de minimis, which is basically Merritt's time, my time. I'm gonna log everybody's time and we'll see. And then when we went out and set up the permissions to enter on the lots, we decided to add a 25% cost share, so that's actually bumped our budget up higher, because now landowners are buying in. And once they saw the work getting done on Chris Works' property and on Duncan's property, Roger at the town hall and I've both been getting more calls from people, and so the list is expanded, and
Sure.
I'm hoping I'll hear back today that we get the expansion. It won't go out. I wrote a sole source justification. It won't go out for bid again, because Kevin's up there, he's working. It wouldn't be timely to put any of it out for bid. He'll just keep going, and he's happy to do that. So it's really come together, and it's just, there's a lot of paperwork coming up with everything.
Is Duncan's, I don't know if you can see on your map, number 8?
Duncan's is 6.
6.
8
okay.
is Richie Martinez.
Okay, and then 9 is Works?
9 is Works, yep.
Okay, all right.
No,
And-
let's see. 7 is Chris Works. I think
Okay.
9 is,
Oh, because his goes clear down
His
to the road.
crosses.
9 is not Duncan's, it's the other folks. I can't think of their name.
That's okay. And then your yellow highlighted A area is backs up to,
A is Duncan's also, so 6
Okay.
is Duncan's and A. So I'm asking her to let me go ahead and add on A. It's vacant, there's no
Right.
home, but I want a bigger fuel break in there, because it's protecting Bunker Hill Road a little bit more if we can do more. That may not happen, but Duncan's are on board and they're willing to make a cost share because they're really happy with what we did on their first part. So A is kind of up in the air, and then you get into B is Loves, C is V Hills, D is Bouchard, I think is how you say their name. E is Dale Hoyg, if I can get him signed on board. Where's my F? Oh, F and G are right back up there by Sugarloaf Circle again. Both of those homes are really well mitigated, so it wouldn't be all that acreage. We may be looking to add like an acre or 2. There's a lot of mistletoe there, and there's some other sort of insect die-off. And so we may just walk those and say, hey, you know, if we did this and this, it would improve forest health. And then H, way up to the end, is Dan Wilson. And his is a real steep, heavily treed one that if we do that, it's going to be a higher cost. The contractor said he wouldn't do that at $1,300 an acre. He'd go up to $1,800 an acre, which is what both other contractors below. The next bids were $1,800 an acre.
so the road that goes by Claudia Morris's house.
Bunker,
Bunker Hill.
Bunker Hill, I think, Bunker Hill Road. Yeah.
Okay. And does A go down that far or not?
It probably goes down at
trying to
that
look at,
triangle and touches hers. Are you on the assessor side?
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can.
Yeah. Does that help you? Yeah, it'll be getting close to her if we go do that, especially if we work all the way down to it.
Right.
I can't tell.
Whose place is A?
Duncan's. Because I'm guessing this is Claudia's lot right here. Is that Claudia or? She's gotta be,
Oh, you've got it.
she's gotta be here or here.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but that's where I'm trying to
Yeah, and I'm
get.
not sure
So
who
Bunker
owns
Hill
this right here.
is really,
Oh, the other thing, while you're looking for that, over, the one that's sort of due north of A, there's a house on. And so I looked to add those guys yesterday when I was on the site and pulling up names, and I reached out to JD and I said, JD, this lot shows a vacant lot, but I sent him a picture and said, I see a house on this vacant lot. So JD went out yesterday, and I'm sure he's probably getting a hold of Roger, but we found an illegal structure on one of the lots. So, and he doesn't know how long it's been there or anything, but he's on it.
so, I'm wondering if
Is that
this,
Claudia?
yeah. So I'm wondering if this is the, oh gosh,
So,
this is the A part of that map. I just can't quite transpose the two, but my point would be that when we went out and looked, clearly there's been no encroachment upon Claudia's property with this mitigation. There were vehicle tracks up that road. She was adamant about them tearing up that road. We drove up it. Wasn't any damage to that road. It was normal mud tracks.
Chris told me that she was out harassing and taking pictures,
yeah,
doing X.
videotaping the whole
Yeah,
thing.
we talked.
At what point, we've been dealing with this lady for forever. At what point do we say, we've done all we're gonna do, Ms. Claudia, if you feel that you've been infringed upon, contact an attorney and sue the
Go
county?
talk to the sheriff then.
I mean,
So that's
really,
dumb.
how much resources can we put into
Too much.
this? I mean, if she has a legitimate complaint, I'm 100% in favor of fixing it, but I'm not sure I feel that way at all. I feel it's just I feel she's harassing.
She's
the county.
harassing the county. She
Yeah,
is.
and I feel you might wanna say.
Harasses everybody.
I just wanna say, I'm just putting this on the table, I'm not making a suggestion or anything, but maybe it's time to say, you know, Ms. Claudia, we have listened to you forever. We have done our best to accommodate you. We're doing no more. If you feel that there's another issue, don't contact us, contact your attorney, and we'll deal with it in the court.
And
I mean, I'm not looking to get us into a lawsuit, but there's a limit to how much resources
she,
we put out there.
originally, when Chris got involved, she did get an attorney who was just doing whatever she said, which was crazy. We got her straightened out, and we made her take down her poke pillars, you remember the rock pillars she infringed? We got it ironed out, so she was quiet for a while, but for some reason, she's coming back, wanting her to keep her road.
I'll tell you, I will be absolutely adamant about this county paying to maintain her road. I won't do it.
No, it's our,
It's a private road.
It's not a
And
private
that's,
road.
I think, eventually where we're gonna have to go. Silver Cliff went through this, trying to determine legally who owned that road.
Right.
I can't sit here today and say I know for a fact what the results of that was.
Well, that's the one where I sent a letter to her and her
Got it
attorney saying
resolved.
that it was an easement, you know, from way back in, what,
72,
1960, a long time
It's
ago.
been,
Over 21 years before she ever bought her property. And it's clearly a county easement across there.
and we resolved it,
We
and that's
don't
when
own
I
it.
thanked her for graveling our road, but we're maintaining it's a county right of way, period.
And Roger Camper told me that as it goes through the ranch until it leaves Silver Cliff Ranch, it's a platted town of Silver Cliff Road.
Right, it's a 60-foot
It's
right of way.
not her
and
driveway,
go down.
it's Bunker Hill Road.
Right.
And she says she put in $10,000 of improvements. The town of Silver Cliff thanked her.
Yeah.
My first reaction
And
when
we
you said-
thanked her for
you
graveling
sent
our
her a
part of
thank
it.
you note. I mean,
Yeah.
thank you. Very nice
Roger
of you.
told me the town of Silver Cliff is completely behind this grant. We are making a muddy mess, you know, it's full on mud season up on
That's why I wouldn't work.
Sugarloaf Road.
Everybody.
But he said their grader's broke, but he said that the repair to the road is up on him, on the town. So
Okay.
they're happy with everything that's going on. I think they're really gonna be happy that we can expand it a little bit and get this work done. I'm hoping that they will be our demonstration site as we move forward with public education and maybe hosting the wildfire preparedness day here. Yeah, and get people excited about this. And I think that the more we do
The more they're gonna
positive here, that it's gonna help us
Sure.
for future grants because they're gonna look at
Good work.
us as having done a good job.
Well, I digressed. I apologize for that.
No, that's
I made
okay.
it take a lot
I
of
think
time.
Mrs. Livengood's ready to bail on
I have
I'm gonna ask the
on my second page here.
it. Yeah.
I lost my second page. I had a couple of notes. Oh, here it is. That I wanted to make sure. Now, we talked the MOP meetings up here March 13th,
Right.
and I have doctor's appointments.
Yep.
Kit said he has it on his calendar. Tom said he has it on his calendar. Some of the current Verde folks are going, so I appreciate people representing us there. They're going to talk about that wildfire community preparedness day. It's supposed to be May 5th, which is when I hope to take vacation. So we're looking at maybe doing something in June up here. March 19th, there's a South Region meeting for the FEMA
Co-train.
post-wildfire grant. Well, up here is the co-train class. I'm wondering if somebody from Custer should represent the March 19th meeting, and I may go, but that's that FEMA mitigation money. And I know FEMA's not a great pot of money, but it's also, a lot of money. So, then the only other thing I didn't mention was DHSEM is going to come in and audit all my Homeland Security grants. They've been threatening for 3 years. They actually scheduled an audit yesterday for April 25th.
Wow.
So, yeah, they're behind. So, but that's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you. I
Yeah.
certainly.
No worries. Finance is my favorite.
Thanks.
What the job's all about.
Thank you. Whoops. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
You're requesting a break now, right?
I did.
If he doesn't, I'm going to.
With, if there are no objections, we will stand in recess for 3 or 4 minutes.
Is this yours?
Did you,
Give you enough room to get out.
I do that email.
The meeting will come back to order. Our next item of business is the clerk's report. You're about to get
Wow,
shot.
I got horse judging practice 25
Oh,
minutes ago.
Lord. Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, she's ready.
We have a lot of things to talk about, so that will have to happen after the commission meeting.
Yes, it will.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Thanks. So mostly my biggest thing is the jail nurse
Okay.
deal. It's going super well.
Good.
I actually kind of started doing it
Ahead of time.
a little before the first. But
As the need arose.
thank God they called me, yeah. So, but yeah, it's going good. I'm getting some protocols put together and seen a couple of guys already that are squared away that weren't before. So yeah, we're going in a positive direction there, definitely. Health fair is the big shindig right now, April 6th. Going full bore with that. Opioid Coalition. How much do we want to talk about that?
I'd like to know something about it.
I don't want to talk about it at all. No, I'm teasing. Who's
So,
involved in that locally?
just me
Okay.
and somebody else that wants to be that's not me. So we're working on we have just a regional opioid coalition, which is Region 13. So that's Custer, Fremont, Lake, Chaffee counties. We've had an individual make some threatening statements towards us and has filed, I don't know if he's officially filed anything or what, but he's saying that we're being discriminatory, which is what his cry is always, towards every organization that he...
So he's after the opioid coalition specifically?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know that.
Is this,
Yeah.
Same guy.
Yes.
We all know who this is.
So, essentially, we're gonna, for all meetings going forward, we'll have the sheriff's department involved, and they'll have a deputy there,
it's terrible that
and,
we have to do that.
but hopefully that will de-escalate any future.
Where are those meetings held?
They're all there, we rotate, so the last one that was in Custer County was in January, so we probably won't have another one in Custer County until July. So,
Keep it posted on that.
yeah. So, they are doing good things as far as, you know, cleaning up. We don't have such an issue, knock on wood, here, as far as like dirty needles being left around, syringes, that kind of stuff. We're not seeing that. We'd like to keep it that way though, so prevention is our main focus for Custer County.
If I might,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know opioids were injected, I thought they were
So
pills.
heroin and fentanyl, that's all opioids that are being injected, yeah. Carfentanil. So we do have, I got, I think 30 boxes of Narcan in Custer County, so if anybody needs to come get it from me at the clinic, I can just give it to you with the training. I've also trained the SO and they all have up-to-date Narcan now, so none of theirs is expired, which is good. So, we did the Amish screenings, that went really good. We found a few kiddos that have some eye issues that are gonna get taken care of, so that's cool.
Good.
Yeah. Any questions about the rest of my report?
I have a question, if I may. This anti-vax epidemic, that's what I'm gonna call it. Are you doing anything to educate people on the importance of vaccinating?
You know, I really haven't done a whole lot. I mean, I put out several things on Facebook recently about like what our rates are, which are lacking in Custer County. We're at 93% vaccination rate, and in order to be considered not at risk for an outbreak, we have to be at 95%. So I've done a little bit of education that way, you know, and just saying that, what I just said, that we're at risk. I do send out information about when our clinics are and what we have available. So, but I think we could probably do more as far as maybe ads in the paper, more Facebook.
Does the clinic have any requirements like for them to treat someone, I'm talking about children across, do they have to be vaccinated? I mean, is there any kind of requirements? Does the school have any requirements that you must be vaccinated before you can attend school?
No, they have, I mean, there is a requirement, but you can sign the waiver. So all you have to do is sign the
You can
waiver
opt out of
saying
it.
you're opting out, and there's probably a third of our school is not vaccinated.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Give it to the Denver fund, will have that
Yep,
taken care of.
Exactly.
Our state legislatures have that on their list of taking away parents' rights to sign the waiver, so that'll be handled soon.
Okay, different issue. Okay.
Vaping is being handled through Custer County Kids Council primarily.
Yeah, and public health. Yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff through public health about vaping too. Mostly education in the community about how bad it is, because I think people don't really, their kids come home and say, oh, it's just flavored water. Well, it's not actually. I went to a class, Carmelina and I both went to a class last week on what vaping actually is. And it's scary stuff,
Nicotine
actually.
addiction is what it is.
It's actually more nicotine because it's more pure nicotine than all the rest of the junk in a cigarette.
Smoke.
But it's a device they use to smoke tobacco. And some of them have marijuana, but it's really far less used for marijuana. It's not the method of choice for marijuana. So, but it is, and it does create. There's 200 puffs in one vape, in one jewel pod, which is essentially the same as a pack of cigarettes. But what we're finding is that people are using one jewel pod in a day, essentially. So they're essentially smoking a pack of cigarettes a day when normally they may be only smoking half a pack or
I'm
less or more.
stupid and naive, but I truly felt, maybe I heard this on the news, or TV ads or something, that it was a safe alternative to cigarettes because it didn't have the nicotine and the carcinogens and stuff. Is that not true?
That's not true. That's what the
That was their
industry
big push,
is.
wasn't it?
That's where the industry is misleading the American population.
Really?
Yes,
Is
because
the FDA involved in this?
yes, and the Philip Morris company and the cigarette big, tobacco people are sneaky. And so they still do promote it as a healthy alternative to cigarettes
That's what I've always
and
thought.
a way to quit smoking. Well, you maybe quit smoking cigarettes, but you're still vaping, and so you're still getting
Getting crap in your lungs.
Exactly, and there's still formaldehyde and the same stuff. I can't remember diacetyl or something. I don't know. The chemical that gives you popcorn lung, essentially, is still in it. So, yeah, it's still really bad. And people think, well, at least it's not harming other people because when they blow it, like
Water
secondhand
vapor.
smoke, it's just water vapor. That's also not true.
Really?
It is. There are like aluminum and like
It's
heavy
secondhand
metals
smoke?
stuff in that huge plume of smoke that comes out after they smoke it.
And it seems like it's more that comes out than a regular cigarette.
Oh yeah, it's tons more.
Sure
It's
see more
like
of it, that's for sure.
You can.
a huge plume.
And I'm convinced there's a psychological boost for vapors to see that big cloud of vapor.
Yeah, there's terms for it. They call them vape gods and goddesses. The more they can like make that plume or do
Right.
fancy things with the smoke, and yeah, it's really, and it's appealing to teenagers because it comes in cotton candy and fruit juice flavor. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So.
What else, ma'am?
Sorry, I didn't mean to go.
No, you're fine.
I have.
Do you have pneumonia vaccine yet?
Pneumonia? Yes. Shingles? No.
Oh, shingles, that's the-
Shingles is the way you want it. No, I don't know. I'm gonna make a phone call today and see why we're being so. Because now we're at a year past when they said that we would get it originally. So.
That's a multi-vaccine, isn't it?
What do you mean by multi?
That you have to have like 3 of them or something.
2. Yeah. 2 to be effective.
You got a big weekend. personally,
hopefully.
I'm not public health nursey, but
You know, if we can get the fairgrounds thawed
waterized.
out, because right now we have no water to the Saddle Club, so I don't really know how
That's
we
not
can.
true. I filled toilets and drank out of the faucet last night. Make sure we get those right.
Yeah.
Or, wait, maybe I did drink out of it.
Well, that's
Last
actually
night
really
they
good
had
to know.
water.
So they got it at least to that point, or?
We had water for 2 hours during a meeting last night, yes.
Okay,
And they're
well,
working on it today.
yeah, Jerry's over there right now. Okay, well, that's actually really good to know, because I thought we were gonna have to postpone it
Yeah,
because we
I
didn't have
don't
water.
believe that's the case. And I think, for me, they could tolerate a leak and keep that. Good point. Do we need another break since we are talking about those?
Sorry.
But I might be
couldn't
speaking out of
resist.
turn.
No, that's actually really good, because I
met with
thought
Pat.
also that we might just do porta potties outside, which is horrible in the winter, but whatever, and haul water in, but that's also a giant pain for 100
Everything I'm
people.
telling you was as of last night at
Okay.
8 o'clock. So
Well,
hopefully
that
they'll make some progress today.
would be splendid.
Yeah. And I do believe,
Yeah.
I mean, if it was me, I would say let's tolerate a leak for 3 hours or 4 hours and keep it on the schedule and do it. You've got a lot of time and effort and money spent, so anyway.
Alright,
The
cool.
Saddle Club,
The rodeo queen ball.
Yeah, rodeo
is
queen
this
ball.
weekend. Yeah, the coronation ball.
so let's deep into that. I appreciate your efforts. All right, ma'am, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. See you.
Thanks.
Didn't get an answer from your husband about tomorrow for Friday night either, so.
I think he's gonna pass, because he has, hunter safety the next morning, plus then the Queen's Ball that night, and
Yeah.
he's already crying about not getting enough sleep this weekend, so.
I will take that as an official pass.
Okay.
Um, okay. So Miss Dawn is on her way. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. See ya.
Melissa, did you see that Alicia said?
Just waving
that
bye
it
to
was
her.
on?
But I'll wave to you too. I'm
Yes.
equal
Yeah, and they're who
opportunity
has the, mobile units.
They used
So.
to set up at the Roost, Renter's Roost,
Okay, yeah,
but,
that'd be a good spot. Yeah, I'll give them a call. That's on my agenda to do too.
well, I
at
just,
some
it
point.
came up, so I
On
thought,
the 8 million
and we all
things.
went, how come we don't do that anymore?
Yeah, yeah, that'd be good.
See you, kiddo.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. What's up, Miss Peggy?
Still meeting?
Okay.
Channel 5 News is on the phone for you, Clint.
Again?
Again?
Boy.
So, they want to know when they can meet with you. Do you want to do that real quick, or are you guys still tied up and we can have?
Why, who are they gonna send? I don't wanna talk to some guy, I want a pretty
Oh,
female.
Lord.
I don't know, Marilyn answered the phone. I'm just a relayer.
They wanna send somebody up here, is that what we're talking about, what they're talking?
Boy, that's very
We're
tight.
gonna wait for Miss.
Another county has joined the ranks this morning,
Which one?
Otero
What are they doing?
joined the ranks of the
Sanctuary.
sanctuary counties.
Good morning.
Oh, Marty, I know.
Brought you some goodies.
Well, this is a lot to drop off on the way.
Oh, Shonda. Yeah, yeah, she's not gonna
Left
but yeah,
my
we're
evaluations.
actually starting for her office.
Thank you.
Well, we're only 40 minutes late this morning, so
Well, I'll make it up in my time because it's always short. Because there's those.
okay. And gentlemen, you did receive an email, not an email from Miss Donna about the handwrittens.
I did. Now I had a question as to where they were being sent. Did we resolve that?
Where the handwrittens,
Where that email was sent?
where it was sent. Oh, yeah, we did have, actually.
Just a question.
Let me gather my thoughts and I'll pursue that.
Gathering help.
Well, and my gathering skills are slowing down. Let me see if I can find that.
You're wondering why I'm sending it to both?
I think that was my question.
Because the Sentinel said they would do it for free, and the Tribune, so I just send it to all of you all at once, rather than.
Because I didn't know we were sending it to either.
Yeah, it goes to the newspapers, and if it can make, if the only bummer thing is if I'm a little too late and the payday hits, they have to do it twice. But the Sentinel, it does it for free, for public information. So I send it for it.
I'm fine. Look, the more people we can get it to, the more transparent we are. That's all I can say.
Just ship it.
You're welcome.
And, I have a dentist appointment, so that's big time. That's my next week. I'm not
When
sure
is
if
it?
it's the crown
What's the date?
one.
18th?
I'll come back in a barrel and in pain.
Have a coffee? Just
The top, so it's 80%. Thank you. And some of these didn't get signed, so I was gonna these two. And I don't think it matters who. What's your name again? Initials at the bottom for me, if you'll catch that stack.
Oh,
you want to post that?
Well,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I gave you the big
I
stack.
missed the instruction sheet.
Boy, that guy is a fast initialer.
Thank you.
Are you on break right now?
No.
Okay. See ya.
See you later. Call me.
Do you want to show those ones on
These
the
are the
bottom?
backups to those.
And, yes, and it's all of them, whether it was Human Services or whomever. Thank you. Okay, I think that's it. Put them away. Oh, shoot, Cal. Man, I'd have been back, like,
2 minutes.
yeah, well, I would have got them sealed in first and then have the misfortune of undoing them all and starting over.
Or you could be like me and just send them out that way.
But that's all I got. I mean, you know what I do, because you either approved it, told me to, or saw the after effects, one or the other. I know there's never anything exciting
So
for
that little mushroom-shaped cloud over your office, that was the after effects?
yeah, sometimes.
So we got our process set up for this afternoon, do we?
Yep, I think we're all ready.
Did you give us something other than what the packets are that we saw already? I didn't take anything home.
And I think Jay had his, but left his. Tom probably has his, and you didn't pick up yours. But it's really just
It's
everything
what
that
I
you saw
looked at before,
On
it's just
there.
the ones we're doing.
on there. But yeah,
So it's over there?
yes,
Good.
I reviewed it last night and then left it. Sorry.
on
Yeah, we're gonna meet a little early. You're prepared for that, correct?
there. Yes,
What time's a little early?
I think it was a quarter till Tom had sent out to make sure everybody was on the same page rather than once the first candidate was there. That's always kind of fun.
Yeah.
Would it be here at 12:45?
And good luck to you. All I can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not looking forward to this, but what a wonderful problem.
I know, isn't that great? But our last two, we've had that same problem, so that's always a
It's
good
my
thing.
kind of problem.
Yeah, I was just looking for that. I was maybe print out some copies of that. There it is. I believe. 12:45 million. So I can print some copies.
That was from Jackie.
They want you to sing the national anthem on the news tonight.
I can do about as good as Roseanne Barr did.
Jiminy Christmas, that is really bad. Oh, man.
That was the black eye on America's face.
Just say no. Oof, you have been a bad gaveler, look at that.
I know, I got a little emotional the other day.
Wow.
He's been on a tear all day.
We're gonna buy him a littler.
That's because he drank out of the toilet.
Okay, I
That's
thought
right.
that as I was coming down the hall, I thought,
Yeah,
And that's why he's had a crappy disposition.
oh, that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can I, well, I'll let her finish first, and then I'll talk.
yeah, were you planning on being at our 3 o'clock meeting as well, or not?
If you want me to call them, because I thought I would
Right.
call at that moment.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
And you would, yeah, I just printed out some of the process thing with the times, and again, just so we don't end up with egg on our face, we were gonna refer to the candidates by number until we actually vote. To protect the innocent. So, yeah, don't you gentlemen think it would be appropriate for Ms. Donna to be at the 3 o'clock meeting? So she can see the results of the vote and then make a...
Well, actually, probably I would just, if you didn't want me here, I'd stand outside the
Yeah.
door, so I would hear, so I
I
can
would
know.
like.
It's a
to hear
public
it, and I'd
meeting.
like your input.
Oh,
Public meeting.
Public meeting, yeah, they're out.
Just, as a point of order, just question, are we gonna suspend this meeting and reconvene at 3, or you're gonna?
We're gonna
end this
adjourn.
one and do a new meeting?
Yes, thank you for asking, but yeah. We will adjourn
Gonna put it on
and
video?
then
The 3 o'clock.
call a new meeting to order at 3.
Doug, is that the plan? So I can put it for overtime.
Anything else, ma'am? Council, did you have something for Miss Donna, or just in general? Okay, all right. Very good, thank you for your work. We're gonna try to get a roundtable discussion to talk about reimbursement funding for emergency stuff. We spoke to Ms. Howard about that this morning, so.
Maybe we can get Christie.
Yeah, that'd be great. She'd be-
Christie or Cindy?
Well, actually, Christie Holt, yeah.
Another one? There's another
Yeah.
Third one.
I was gonna call her
I'll
Coleman.
confuse it
Well,
more.
I know.
please do so, because I have no idea who you're talking
Well, I
about when you
know.
don't, so.
Call it Donna.
All right, thank you, ma'am,
Bye,
appreciate
thanks.
it.
Yeah.
Well,
So who the heck's the clerk we're gonna
that
do?
brings us to the next item of business, or the next staff report. Madam, the floor. Oh, shall we, Counselor, real quick?
Phone call was from Andy Cohn from Channel 5. He does a lot of this investigative reporting stuff, and he was asking about the resolution that we passed. He said he'd gotten a call from an attorney in Pueblo. It's an attorney. I went to law school with this guy. He's sort of the MH of the legal profession. even way back in law school, he was always sending off angry letters to the editor and everything. He's been angry his entire career. But he called and left a message for me wanting to know what that was all about and how we could do that. I tried to call him back, but I just got a recording, so I just left a short response. But I know he's the one that called Channel 5 about this and wanted to know exactly what was going on. Andy Cohn wanted to know what was going on. I just said it was a resolution, which is not an official law up here. It's a statement of position of the Board of County Commissioners. And I said the ultimate decision on whether or not to enforce a court order, if there should be one of these red flag orders in Custer County, would be up to the sheriff. This was just a statement, our resolution is a statement of support for the sheriff, whatever he decides to do, since there are serious questions about the constitutionality since it obviously ignores fundamental due process, the way this law is written now, and that it would need, our position was that we would want to see it challenged in court and have an ultimate determination on its constitutionality, but it's not the commissioner's call, it's the sheriff's call on whether or not he wants to enforce that provision if it comes up.
Basically the same as Fremont County.
It's, and other counties have adopted it too. Montezuma County has, I think Teller County has, or is going to. Otero did, Weld County was looking at the last I heard. He wanted to get a copy of the resolution. I told him to send me his email, and let's see if he did. Yeah, so, can you email it to him?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, if you wanna get me that email or send me the email or something.
Here, can you just take it off here real quick? Just send it to the resolution.
Is it not on the website?
Yeah, I thought it probably was, but I wasn't sure. And it may not be on there yet.
Find it sometime.
I don't see it.
Touch his
that.
name and it'll come up.
Oh, there.
What happened to the gentleman who wanted to,
Yeah, Eric
He talked to
Stinson.
Alyssa.
Okay.
he left?
Yeah, he talked to Alyssa,
Oh,
and that's all he needed.
oh, okay.
Oh, I thought he was here.
Apparently.
Okay.
It was something about
I
the
did too.
opioid crisis.
Issue to discuss with her.
And then it's like he wanted to take his cap off, maybe he had a scope condition, and
Yeah, he wanted-
found out he could talk to Alyssa.
Yeah, you're
Right. Yeah, I don't see
She's waiting for
the,
the vaccination.
that was 1902,
That's
correct?
what I was just gonna say, I think that's 1902.
1902, and it's not posted. I'll shoot Big Boy an email real
Oh,
quick
it is
and
nice.
ask him.
Yeah, it's 1902.
It was 1901.
No,
One
marijuana.
was Marijucci.
Yeah, you're right, it was 1902. Right.
No, that was
I
an
wrote-
ordinance,
I
that
wrote a
was
statement.
1901.
The resolution
Oh, yeah,
1901
was
was
the ordinance.
the holidays. 1902
Right.
Is the,
An ordinance 1901
yeah.
All right, you're
was
right.
the marijuana.
That's right, that was the
Different.
ordinance.
Different critter.
So we want the sanctuary county, right?
Resolution.
Are we waiting on the clerk and recorders?
I
was a
thought
joke.
we were
That
still
was a
waiting
joke.
on
How come those
council, but
certificates are bigger now?
What certificates?
That's my old one, I haven't hung yet. The certificate you gave me is bigger.
are you done, sir, Councilor?
Not,
Yes,
it's
I
a
am.
different
Frame.
machine.
No, it's the frame.
Oh, you cut that back. Ah, okay.
Okay.
Oh, I get a bigger frame.
Madam Clerk,
Oh, me?
we did not receive anything ahead of time, correct?
No, you did not, because I wasn't gonna have anything, and then last night I came up with things.
Okay.
Are they good?
Because I know you like to have things, so.
Oh, good, look at that, she did it.
I even printed a thing for the counselor.
That's amazing. He always appreciates that. I mean, look at the great look on his face. He's just
I know.
Right, yeah.
That's my sincere smile.
That's your
Okay.
sincere smile.
That was a good one, Claire.
Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is I just wanted to give you guys a heads up about a thing that's been going on in my office. In November, it was discovered by one of the other counties that the December renewals on certain plates, the specific ownership tax was not figured right. And so, that's the tax that when a vehicle's brand new, they, you have an MSRP of what that vehicle is worth. And so the state takes 85% of that MSRP, and that's the taxable value. That's what they figure this SOT on. And as that vehicle ages, it goes down. And because of our new computer system, and how they figure out how those vehicles age, when December renewals rolled over into January, they didn't figure right. So they discovered it in November, thought it would fix itself, it didn't fix itself, so they finally came up with a fix. And when they finally let all of us know in December, we could manipulate ones that came through and fix them. But it didn't get fixed till January 11th. And so there was a lot in the state that got overpaid. So after a couple months of working and talking and figuring out what we were gonna do, all those people are gonna get reimbursed. The state said, they gave the counties the option, do you wanna reimburse them, or do you want us to reimburse them? Talking with Virginia, she said, let the state reimburse them, because we had 76 vehicles to reimburse, so that would have been 76 checks that Virginia would have had to cut. And so what we did is we sent the state one big check for all of our reimbursements, and then they'll send all of the reimbursements to the people. Right, because the ownership tax stays in the county, and that's the portion that gets divvied up amongst school, fire, all the entities gets divvied up amongst. So that got kind of messed up too, because those fees were already dispersed. So when they disperse those, once they send all the checks out and we get everything all straight, then whatever month it ends up being, those fees will be adjusted, and they just won't, those entities just won't get so much that month.
And do we need to communicate this to each of those entities or not?
I think that Susie has talked to, I know she's talked to the school, and I don't know if they'll send a little letter out, letting them know, or, it wasn't, even though our amount was, $9,362.26, which sounds big, but then once it's divvied up, it wasn't huge, not like I can imagine Denver County and some at El Paso, some of those counties, it was gonna be pretty big. And I just put some figures in here. The state won't reimburse anything under $10. We had 5 that were under $10, the lowest being a penny, the highest $7.41, a penny, yeah. There was 2 that were undercharged by $1.50. Why that happened, they have no idea. Obviously, I'm not gonna go after those 2 people for $1.50. And so, I just wanted to make you guys aware of that in case you, it was on the news, but I only had 2 phone calls from people saying, hey, mine was in December, do I get money back? And one person did, and the other person didn't, so. And as you can see, some of those, the refunds range from $25.78 to $1,092.59. That's a pretty big overpayment that you,
It's probably my truck.
I could guess one of my buddies was one of them coming in here and claiming that, because that was.
You're the only one I know that got a new one.
Be about a third of what he paid, so I'm sure he'd jump in line for that.
yeah.
So you have the ability to type in somebody's name and see if they're due a refund or not.
What the state did is they sent us out a spreadsheet of
So you just
all
look
of
at it.
ours, and so yeah. So then we looked at it, pulled out the ones under $10 and the ones over, and
We probably ought to, we have one of the papers here, but think maybe both papers might wanna put something in.
Put something in.
Just so people understand that,
Refunds are coming.
well, yeah, but I think it's more important to say that this was a computer issue with the new computer system, not inept.
It wasn't a.
Clerk
Yeah.
and recorder's office.
Yeah. Well, and I think anybody that's been in my office since August to do any kind of motor vehicle transaction knows that we have a few, anytime you switch computer systems, you're gonna have
She was
problems.
having a problem today.
But, yeah, every month it seems like it's a new, so I would imagine maybe once we get to August, we'll have worked through all of those problems.
And then we'll have a new
Hope.
system in September.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't say that.
And Kelly, that
Good.
formula
Thank you for
that
informing us. This- I was
overcharged
unaware.
them was from the state, right?
It wasn't the formula so much as so if you have a vehicle that, if you buy a vehicle this year, and it's a 2019, but you don't buy it until November, in January, we consider it a year old already, actually 2 years old, because we count 19 and 20. So that was where the problem was. It wasn't figuring the age of the vehicle right, and so then it didn't put it in the right category to drop it down.
But it was statewide, so it came
It
down
was
from on
statewide.
high.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, statewide. And it was a glitch in the computer program.
Why are you giving us your?
Well, I think I understand why we got these, and I want to
Yes.
address that real quick.
So, is there no more questions on
Nope.
it?
No.
We're good
Go
with
ahead,
that?
move
Okay.
on.
All right, so,
30-10-319, Part F says that the clerk shall, upon request, provide pastries and or other.
I was going, yeah, I don't see that. What are you talking about? No,
Page two.
No.
that's not on my copy.
It's on mine.
Yeah, I got it. And.
Right here, and it doesn't go
Good
in.
copy.
Yes, ma'am.
So, these, I just wanna have a discussion about, these three statutes address what my, duties are as far as you guys, what I'm supposed to do. And basically, take your minutes, I was talking to Meredith about it this morning, and it's sort of funny right now because what's in statute and what I do and what Meredith does sort of is a mix. So, when Chris Lang first became the administrative assistant and Debbie was clerk, Debbie deputized Chris to do some of the things that these statutes address. And then we did that, I did that with Brenda, I deputized her, and I have not deputized Meredith yet, because I wanted to have this discussion so that we're all on the same page. The taking of the minutes and going to your meetings and all that, I'm good with it. That works for me. Once in a while, on the 20th, I will be gone to conference, and that's when you have your Wetmore meeting. And so, in a case like that, I would have Meredith she would just set it up, and then she would just do the minutes.
So legally, she has to be deputized to do it? Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
it has to
Cool.
be one of my
Is there like a
deputies.
sword involved and like a
That's right.
Yeah,
Nine?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That way.
And,
It's a badge.
Lori is my deputy, but with my office being as busy as it's been, it's hard for her sometimes to come in here, even though sometimes she will come in here if there's time.
Push comes
But
to
a
shove.
lot of times, especially when we go to Wetmore, it's just as easy for Meredith to do it. And Meredith is more up on what's going on with you guys, so if a question comes up, she could maybe answer it, whereas Lori couldn't answer it about, something previous or something. So if you guys are good with me deputizing Meredith to do that, then I think I'll just go ahead and do that so that she can take care of minutes for me.
So you need a motion.
I don't think it does, cause it's,
Jared, you're
well, I
the one
don't know,
that's deputizing
because
her.
she's your administrative assistant, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a suggestion would be, if it's overkill, it's just overkill, but if we don't do what we should have, then it might pose a problem, so I'm gonna suggest maybe we ought to do it in a motion.
I'll
Just make it
move
a
we
formal.
allow.
But wait, before you make a motion,
You're right.
let's get the rest of it out there, so
The money and.
the thing that,
Yeah, let's talk about
yeah,
that.
talk about the money. The thing that, I'm really torn with is the keeping of all of your documents and stuff. I told Meredith this morning, all that stuff that she keeps in there, I'm supposed to keep, but
Right,
I don't want to keep.
but it
I
doesn't
don't
say to
have
keep
the,
that
I
in
don't
your
have the
office.
room, I don't have the, yes,
Yeah, it
and
doesn't
it
matter where you
doesn't.
store it.
But as administrative assistants change and stuff, some may go through the drawers and say, oh, well, we don't need that, and I wanna, I mean, you guys know just from the time you've been in here, there's a lot of times we gotta go back 10 years to find something that, and so I wanna make sure that certain things are kept. So this is my thought. Things that you guys signed, or that there was a motion to approve, I feel that even if your administrative assistant kept a copy of it, I need to have that original, or at least a copy of the signed original in my office, so that I can keep that.
When you say in your office, you mean physically in your office?
Yeah. Yes.
So are you proposing to work with Meredith and help work up a plan between the two of you on what you'll be keeping and what she'll be keeping?
Yeah. And so whenever, like yesterday, when you guys passed
Memorandum
grant,
of understanding.
the grant
Oh,
thing.
Yeah.
And I said, give me a copy of that. That was why, not because I wanted to see what it was all about, but just that you guys passed that. 5 years from now, didn't we do something like that on grants? Does somebody have a copy of that somewhere? Then I can go and dig that copy out.
Good. What's
You
your
really can't
pleasure?
do that.
So,
You
that
ready
sounds-
for me to move this?
Now you
on?
can move.
I move that we allow Meredith to support Kelly and let Kelly deputize her to keep the records as Kelly needs to be kept, either here or in her, provided for her office.
I'll second the motion. Been moved and seconded to authorize Kelly to deputize Meredith Nichols, our administrative assistant, to also serve as a deputy secretary to the board. Further discussion?
Assistant, not
Assistant.
secretary. I'm just kidding.
Just a question.
Actually, that is the secretary to the board.
Right, for the administrators.
Oh.
That's correct.
You're a deputy
So
A
you're
secretary.
clerk, a clerk to the board.
Clerk to the board.
Clerk.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Will this impede in any way the normal duties that our administrative assistant does now?
No, and that, I had a discussion with Meredith this morning about that, because the administrative assistant's position has sort of grown. You know, when
Yes,
Chris
yeah,
did
that's
it,
what I'm asking.
she just was a assistant to you guys. When Brenda came on, then she became an assistant to Donna, and so it's added, and now she's a grant professional. Yeah, now she's a grant professional, and so I didn't want to add more to her, and so yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It goes
But it
hand in
happens
hand with
so
the,
there, it
with the
doesn't happen very often.
BOCC stuff, so it's not like a add-on, it's just making sure that you
Yeah.
get, like, just communications
Right.
phone.
And it's easier because she's in
She's
here
in
already,
here anyway
and
for
like
the
I
same
said,
meeting.
she knows what's going on in here, and so.
Further discussion? Public comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Do you do that face-to-face just you and her?
Yeah.
Swear her in.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
You can talk now. You bored, Shannon?
Any unfinished business?
No.
New business, with your permission, sir, prior to moving on to discussion of the county water board, may I ask?
I was just going to extend an offer to the three of you. So KOA News will be here at 1 o'clock to interview me about the Sanctuary County and Red Flag bill. So if any of the three of you would like to come along,
Thank you for
can
that
as well.
invitation.
So I
At
just
1
wanted
o'clock?
at 1 o'clock.
You come into your office?
Just come to my office, and then I don't know if we'll do it over here or there. I don't know, but
We will be unavailable.
All three of us are
We're interviewing for a job position.
But I would
Okay.
like to tell you, because Andy Cohen talked to
Yeah.
me first, he told you that, and
he didn't tell me that he talked to you. He just said that he'd like to.
but I explained to him that this resolution is not an order to you that you can't enforce that red flag law.
Right.
It's just that we support your decision
Right.
on it, and that's what the other counties are doing. It's all pretty much identical.
Yeah. Right.
And she's
Right.
gonna send him a email and a copy of the resolution, so he's got it. But it's, so, and she said Otero County just passed it,
Just passed theirs.
and Montezuma County has, I think, and I don't know
Yeah,
who
Montezuma
Teller
and
was.
Fremont did on the same day. Teller's working towards
Weld
that.
is working
And
on
Weld.
one.
Weld is working on it. There's 5 or 6 that have done it now. Then there's a couple that have said that they did something similar in 2013, and so they're not going to redo another one specifically for this bill, but they've already made their position clear. So I think we're at like 6 or 7 right now, with a bunch more considering it.
They said they were contacted by a Pueblo attorney, a guy named Lee Sternall actually called me on Friday. Didn't get a hold of me, just left a message, and I called him back, and because he was calling about that, he was kind of angry, which is how he always has been the entire time I've known him. But I just told him basically the same thing that we're talking about here, is that we have very grave concerns about the constitutionality of that legislation, since it seems to completely ignore fundamental due process, and that's why we're leaving it to your discretion on whether or not, I guess in a particular case, if it's something that really looks flagrant, you might want to enforce it, but
Right.
it's up to you.
The due process, I mean, the way the system works now, I mean, we can use due process and do the same basic. I mean, there are some
Right.
limitations, but, yeah. Okay. I just thought I would extend that
And that's
offer.
KOAA?
Channel 5.
Yeah, Channel 5. Yeah. I'll have to run, I'm gonna run home right now and change, so I don't know if I'll have time.
We're gonna go get pretty.
Yeah, makeup,
Well,
you gotta get the makeup done.
Well, I'm just gonna put my uniform on because it'll be on state news everywhere tonight, so.
Look like a sheriff now.
Proud of you.
Official.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, way to go.
Be sure they spell your name right.
Okay,
We have some more.
next item of business, discussion of the county water board. Mr. Kanda.
All right, I won't take much time. This has nothing to do with our withdrawing from Upper Ark. You know, it's what got us thinking about it. So let me back up a couple things. So I got talking to a lot of people, as we all have, and we've been in a lot of meetings on this on water issues. So I see, because I'm as a person that uses water up here, both agriculturally and domestically. There are 2 needs that the county really has. That's to really worry about the underground water as well as surface water. The fact that Upper Ark's doing this thing is one issue, but there are others that are going to continue to be bringing it up. So we have a prosperity plan that depends on water as well. We have people that want to buy and sell water locally. It's always going to happen, regardless of what Upper Ark does. So I got thinking about a charter because right now the 3 of us do a lot of things, get involved with a lot of different things that take a lot of time, and we can't spend enough time on any one issue. That's why we have boards and committees. And so I know that, I forget how many years ago, it was probably back in 1972 when they first started worrying about setting up the water augmentation for the county. and the Wet Mountain Water Board, Wet Mountain Valley Water Board is what it was called, was the staff. I asked several people working on it, I find the bylaws for that, and the only place that I got a reference to, unless you found it, Tom, have you seen the actual reference, piece of paper on that?
I'm looking, I thought I had, but I'm not gonna quote.
Keith Hood did it. He thought he had it. He didn't. He told me to go to the state website, and then I asked Kelly how are we going to find if they actually filed a document. It wasn't set up as an authority board. It had no teeth to mitigate water issues for the county. It was a board that was set up to look at issues and help us help the people.
Do you know when it was set up?
He told me it was 35 years old, so that's probably a rough guess on Keith's part, but it's at least 35 years old. So I got thinking, the issue that we saw happen with the upper arc can happen with any other issue. I've heard of several other people wanting to set up their own water augmentation plans outside of that. Donnelly's one of them. He kept his water rights out of the conservancy for the land trust that he set up, or however he's got it set up, in order to use that water to augment and do things for his own good. Can't blame him for doing that. There are other issues, and when I interviewed and talked with a lot of people I've talked to, Randy Rusk, the Gearys, Scott Geary, water users on the surface, as well as thinking about commercial needs like the towns. Towns need water augmentation if we're going to grow any at all, or if they want to attract any business that we would have some purview over, or whether they do alone. They're going to have to understand how much water they need and what's it going to impact, who's impacted by it. We aren't experts, but we need people focused on it. So I was, then I went to Cinderhawk, talked to him, and I called him as late as last night. I've talked to him a couple times about not the issue of our augmentation dispute here on the current boundaries, but we were let down by the board over there, and we're blindsided by actions that were occurring. How can we augment that? And so I thought about a couple things. If we set up a committee that would be the interface between the citizens understanding the agricultural issues like a rancher might have, and for example, everybody I've talked to says, we do need probably on dry years or ways to augment water or store water to use to release out of the valley somewhere and let them irrigate our own field. We need if we're gonna do a business anywhere, or a residence, it might be a residential business, so just a bed and breakfast thing. They need to augment water from somewhere, either their own family use or whatever. So we need some kind of a group that we charter. I would call it a committee. I don't think we need to call it a board. It connotes different things to do, but we should discuss it. That has maybe 3 goals there. One would be to take the citizens' issues. A citizen might come in here and say, I was just approached by a fountain and they want to buy my water. And the neighbor next door hears about that and he's got an issue with that transaction happening, and what are we going to do about it? Well, there's several things that you can do. You can fight it yourself, spend a lot of money, or you go to the upper arc, and see if they're interested in helping or buying it or whatever, or whether it's somebody else. So you got to get the citizens' input to what the issues are, and then secondly, you need to understand what are the issues associated with other organizations like the upper arc. I felt like we were let down by that board, and even our reps on the board. I'm not talking about you were new, Tom, and you got a lot of other things to do. They should have been aware of that, and they should have taken you to decide, or Donnelly could have and could have brought things to us sooner, maybe. But in the end, maybe, and so Cinderhoff told me, this is what I came up with, an interface with them, is that they have a committee set up already that it consists of directors of the upper arc. They have a committee that does actually go around and work issues within the counties that they serve. An engineer sits on it, several of the directors, and the people that are smart, you know, and they work issues with the local communities. Well, I didn't know that. And I would think that our committee ought to engage with them. It's not in those public meetings that they hold. These are separate meetings that they do, apparently, for other people. I would see the charter then take the number one goal would be our committee works with citizens. They have issues, they could be working with the committee that they have set up on that issue or not. Or a new issue that maybe the upper arc's gonna go do another boundary. They will do another phase, and I know they mentioned it to us, wanna incorporate the blue line in a different spot. Or the blue line in another county. It could impact this valley if, you know, I know for truth that their charter is not to sell and buy water out of the district. They're not allowed to legally. But they can sure augment water out of here if we had excess water and augment it so that the guy in Chaffey County could be, you know, if that was available. Well, I would like to know that, and I think our citizens ought to know what is going to happen, what transactions are happening, and we haven't got the time to understand that unless we're focused on it. And then the other one would be to bring and to facilitate those issues. Since they don't apparently think that they needed to tell us what was going on, I would think our committee would be engaged to say, I want to get that committee down here to talk to our citizens, or I want to get the experts to say, you know, we're thinking about changing a blue line, or we're thinking about whatever it is. Let's make sure you're aware of it, or let's just get an education program going periodically, because we get a big turn of people that come and go out of the valley, buying and selling land, buying and selling ranches, or in the future putting wells in. Is that going to impact us? You know, and we need to know timely enough so we can figure out what we want to do, what stand we would like to take, what our citizens want us to do. So I think it would be a good idea. I don't know what to call it. Maybe get a group together. I do know that the people I've talked to would like to see a more interaction going on. Randy Russ said he'd participate. Scott Geary said he would. Keith Hood did. I would like other suggestions. Maybe it ought to be the George Medina, or what's his name, Medeiros, or maybe a citizen on the, you know, that's a small business or whatever. Somebody that has a vested interest in what the future of water may be, or you know, and in our strategic plan, for example. We need to know whether it's smart to approve a business that might look good, but is the impact really considered besides just the size of the business or how many lights they've got or whatever? Is there a water issue that we ought to be aware of as a board to whether we want to approve that application for a special permit or you know, whatever from a planning point of view? So this is just a thought. We don't have to act on it today, I don't think. By the way, Cinderhoff told me, I asked him, have you gotten our letter? And he hadn't gotten it 2 days ago or 3 days ago for whatever reason. He said he's got it now. And he did say that he's going to work. He has no position one way or the other on it. He said he's going to take what we said, and it's going to be worked in that meeting real time on the 14th. So that's just a heads up what's going to go on in the future on that. But you know, I don't want to be blindsided anymore, and I know neither does the rest of the citizens up here. And I know that everybody really knows that our future growth or not depends on water, and our ability to keep the agricultural businesses going here. Which, by the way, I got looking at that. You look at who's in the upper arc, what their real businesses are. A lot of it's recreational. Water issues. There's not a lot of, you know, there's a lot of ranches out there, but I don't know how much of that's being augmented or not. You know, you've sat in more meetings with the upper arc guys, Tom, than I have. And they've got quite a few issues on stormwater underground and on the surface. But I think we're the last of the bunch that we really do need to have some storage up here, I think, of some kind, that we ought to be careful on how people develop that one way or the other. So anyway, just a thought, just some, whatever you guys think, we can talk more about that, because we got time to deal with it. I don't know what Upper Ark's gonna do. Yeah, I know they're not gonna quit. They got rights up here, they're gonna keep working, and we're gonna have to work with them and others as we go on. Any thoughts?
Well, certainly I think we need to have a better awareness of water in this county, both as commissioners and for the citizens of the county. I've been approached by several different individuals, water right holders in the county, that feel like we should withdraw from Upper Ark and look at developing a local water conservancy district. If that were to come to the table, certainly I think a committee would be appropriate to start that process. Are you kind of thinking, I don't want to use the word watchdog, but it's used a lot, but an oversight committee to keep track of what's going on?
That has to, I think, that's a part of it. It's not the only thing. I'm not looking at this as being, I don't think, my personal opinion is, I don't think we could, I don't know how a county could set up its own conservancy board and have enough wherewithal to be able to go to all the things that are necessary to spend the money to fight things or to argue things. We can do small things like we've done already. We can issue an objection. I don't know, but maybe in the future, if we grow, maybe that's true. But then I ask the bottom line is the state has set up these conservancy districts to keep the water in the state. They don't care, they set up these things and they keep the district itself. They gave them some boundaries, what they can and can't do within their legally buy and sell the water. They want to keep it in the state, but that doesn't keep it necessarily from being sold into and sold out of that district. By a farm down there and a local guy here that's not involved in that, they can legally sell their water anywhere. A rancher up here could say, okay, fine, let's sell it to Pueblo. That's out of the Upper Ark district. So I don't know. It's something that when those kinds of things happen, we ought to be aware of, and maybe even the Upper Ark doesn't have enough wherewithal, meaning the resources and the money to fight a big ticket guy. Matter of fact, I think it was Scott Geary or somebody told me about a guy that said he wanted to sell his water, and I'm going to sell it, and you haven't got enough money to fight. I got more money than you do, to fight the issue, whatever it was. So that's going to always be the case.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I've given a lot of thought to this, as I know we don't have obviously done a lot of homework on this. My biggest concern is, in a macro sense, that Upper Ark, instead of being our ally, is viewed as our adversary.
Yeah.
And I think most people I talk to, and I've talked to a lot, not as many as you do, I'm not in the same realm as the farming community as you guys are. But I've spoken to a lot of people who look at Upper Ark as our adversary and not our ally, and they should be our ally.
Right.
And they're very mad. And it's not just recent, it's been going on for a long time. 2009, when a plan was promoted, is maybe when the most adversaries started, and it's kind of progressed since then. Certainly Upper Arkansas the Conservancy District has done nothing to help themselves by doing things behind our back, voting when Mr. Donnelly's not there, keeping it away from our ex officio member, who certainly would have reported to us what was going on had he had any idea. I don't wanna use the term snake in the grass, but that's kind of a term that's my personal feeling of how they operate. I've been approached multiple times about why don't we do our own. In fact, we had a gentleman here just the other day, Mr. Gulliver, Tim Gulliver, who has expertise in breaking off and doing your own augmentation plan. If truly we're gonna keep the water within this county, our own augmentation plan makes perfectly good sense. Perfectly good sense, because what we would do is we would say, water will stay within our county, period. And I'm not a rancher, I've never been a rancher. I mean, I learned which end of a cow you get milk out of not long ago. I mean, facetiously, of course, but I mean, I don't profess to have the kind of knowledge that the ranchers and the farmers have. I don't know, but my understanding is our water cannot leave this county. It cannot, because there's no one bringing it back in to replace it. Therein lies the issue, where the upper end is going downhill, we give it to someone down below us, it is not coming back.
Right.
Okay, so let me just finish. I think your suggestion may have some significant merit. I'd like to talk a lot more about it if we decide to move forward. Hang on. At least it will have it will be an interim step before the county turns around and says, Upper Ark, we're out of here. Okay, that, and what I'm really concerned about, if the water board approves, the water court approves this, and we decide to do our own thing, too bad. We're stuck. So, if we're gonna do something, we need to do it soon. I mean, within the next year or two, however long it's gonna take to work. This is a major, major problem. And if these people, and I don't mean to say these people, those guys, but if the Upper Arkansas Conservatory District actually sat down and said, we're allies, let's work together to form an alliance to make sure that we're protecting Custer County, I'm great. The problem with Upper Ark is it's not just Custer County. It encompasses a much larger area, and their alliance is not to Custer County. It is to themselves first, and then everybody they serve. Therein lies the problem for me. You will serve yourself wonderfully well. You will serve, if you have 10 masters, you're gonna have to divide it up. I have real issues.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's where I feel.
No, I'm 100% with you. But my problem is we can pass a law that says we're going to keep the water in the county. You cannot, unless you can buy it, keep it here.
I agree with that.
If a guy wants to sell it out, he's going to sell it to the highest bidder.
I agree.
So you can't do that. What you can do though is get enough help. If you had an alliance, and if they were doing what we want them to do, and you build that trust. See, I don't care what happens. I can understand how it evolved. You take a wild and woolly county like we were in the 60s and the 50s, not any laws of any kind, any regulations we wanted, we're free here. And a guy has water rights, he wanted to do what he wanted to do. And when they came up here and tapped wells in the ground, the first thing they think is they're going to take my water, they're going to make it metered, I'm going to have to pay for my own water. I mean, lots of rumors, and it was a problem with how they publicized it and made people aware of what was going on. And then they would fight with each other, and things evolved. But now they've got a process set up. It is what it is. I want to be able, from my point of view, to be able to leverage the good of that union. And if they are here to help us, then show us how you're going to do it. And it isn't done by putting a boundary up here and saying, all right, boom, it's there, too bad, we own the water rights and we're going to buy and sell it within our legal rights. They can do that. They can buy and sell that water out of Conquistador from here on out. They own it. So, and I'm not advocating we sell it to them either. You know, it would be nice if the ranchers up here decided that as part of that process, build these storage. We can't even build storage in the wilderness area. You know, it's a wilderness area. Although I think on the borders, I've seen, and I did some research on that too, there are places where they have allowed, for example, they yielded and you can put a motor vehicle on Rainbow Trail. In wilderness area, you're not supposed to do that at all. But they've got certain things you can and can't do. But we need people to help us do that. You and I and Tom can't do it, you know.
If I may, so this board, commission, group, whatever you call
Committee,
it,
whatever
doesn't
you
really
wanna
matter,
call it.
whatever the name of it is, this group of citizens with a common goal, how do you envision, or maybe you don't at this point, how do you envision to hold the Upper Arkansas Conservancy District in check to make sure that, I mean, so far it's been behind the back.
So what I that was an
thing
issue,
too.
and that's one of the reasons I talked to Cinderhoff a couple of weeks ago when this first came up, and then last night I said the same thing. Well, I can see if you really do have a committee, and you really do work issues that people care about within that county, or within that small part of a county where there is an issue, then we need somebody to help focus at it, and I don't want to see it coming to the commissioners by themselves. It ought to be somebody that's focused here that would work with them, and that's the alliance that we have to hold them to initially. And oh, by the way, we can sit in any public meeting they want. They've got over there too, but we haven't got the time to do it all the time either. And that's why if we focus a couple people that care about keeping the water here and working with them to help us, then I can see, you said, it's just like the United States got set up when the colony said, I'm going to shake hands and we'll have this loose alliance. You've got to start cooperating together instead of, we got to overcome this them, us, they're against us attitude, and they won't do it unless they start, trust. We got to trust each other somehow, but you got to start. And so that's what I would like to see the charter of this committee being that interface that represents the water interests of this county specifically, and are really focused on listening out there and saying, okay, so you have a project you're going to do in Fremont County. It's like the guys on the road and bridge down there want to tap the water so they can go water their roads. Is that going to hurt us or not? It sounds like that's just an issue down there, but it's not. They want to be able to augment that water if it's dry. So, and then that way the committee can bring that attention to us as commissioners if it needs some, just like they did. I mean, it came up out of the clear blue, right? All of a sudden, boom, they've got a blue line that they're putting in there, and we found out after the fact. If we can find out that that's what they're doing. Plus, I don't know, they call the program by whatever names they got. You got to know the codes too, and you only do that by being involved with them.
Can I interject?
Sure.
The county has absolutely no authority to regulate water.
That's right.
And, I mean, to have some kind of a board or a committee or commission, whatever you want to call it, that's somehow created by the commissioners, and you're talking about augmentation and everything, it sounds like we're trying to dip our toes in that water that we're forbidden to.
No, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that just like we found out now, we can't tell them they can't do it. They're going to go do whatever they're going to do. They'll either withdraw us. It won't matter if they withdraw us or not. They're going to continue to do what they're going to do. But we need to be aware. Our citizens need to be aware. And, why are there county commissioners on those boards today? Chaffey County's got their chairman of the board sits on that committee.
Well, if it's a watchdog committee of some kind, that's fine, but I don't see that it's something that the Board of County Commissioners should be involved in setting it up or organizing it. It needs to be citizens getting together and forming.
Well, sure. I mean, is that what we want to do, or do we want to be proactive as the representative of the citizens to help focus that? I'm not saying they report to it. That's why I say I don't want it to be a board that has any authority, because we don't on water issues. We have the authority to pay attention to it, and we have the issue of if somebody applies for a business permit to us, do we grant it or not? Well, we got to make sure that the water issues were tended to, the restrictions on whatever that issue is, before we would grant something.
That's what planning and zoning.
That's what planning and zoning does. Anyway, that's a thought. I'm just thinking out loud.
No, there was, and you're talking about resurrecting the water committee that Custer County had before.
And the Board of Commissioners at that time did set it up.
And I certainly feel that the people most impacted by the water, which is really everybody, but certainly the farmers and the two towns and George Medeiros and everybody else who's impacted by water, needs to, I mean, it certainly makes sense for them to have a group of, so that they could sit in a meeting and say, here's the issues I'm concerned about, and then bring those to
To the
the
right
bar.
people, yeah.
I think we're gonna have to see it, I mean, for that to work, whether the county's involved or not, it's, to me, it appears there's gonna have to be a fundamental change of attitude over the overall
Right.
bar.
So where do we begin? We begin in the next meeting.
I'm not knocking what you're saying,
No, I
because
know.
maybe this is the first step to
That's
walk
right.
in and say, let's start working
And
together.
the reason I brought it up now is for that very reason, Jay, is because we're gonna be over there on Thursday. And,
Right.
and that would be a time to test them, start testing them. You know, you guys admitted you screwed up. They came up here and said, let's fix it. And if you're willing to work with us, how are you willing to work with us?
Well, they also said that if we sent them a letter telling them we didn't want the county in this new plan, they'd take us out. You just said that.
I said I didn't know. Cinderhoff didn't say no.
Okay, but Cinderhoff, it sounds like, might not be on board with that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, let me tell you specifically what he
I'm
said,
just
so we're not
listening to what you told
confused.
me.
He said he has no position he's gonna tell me right now, because it's up to his board.
and that is a responsible, appropriate.
And so that's what I meant. I
Right.
do know that they're gonna
But
talk
his
it over, and we
board-
don't know what they're gonna do until we
His
see it.
board spokesman made that comment.
Right.
It wasn't just an off-the-cuff gentleman.
That's right.
So, you know, I think if you wanna be involved in helping a group of significant water users to kind of form a coalition of some sort to work with, I think that would be a positive step.
Sure.
And that's just my thought.
Well, and that's why I think the three of us need to be on board, because just like Tom said a minute ago, somebody said, well, let's go set up a county water conservancy district. We can't. We don't have the authority to do that.
Well, we can't on our own, we could
Actually,
certainly
we
petition the
can.
court to do that, if we have
Right.
a court order
But
thing.
we can, the county.
We can facilitate that.
Correct. The
Just
county
like that.
could be behind that if that was something that would be in the best interest of this county. I believe, and council can certainly tell me I'm wrong, and he'd be right by telling me I'm wrong, or whatever, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I just wanted to bring it up. I want to be on record at this meeting because we are responsible, and we made those statements. We are made the issue with this last filing, and the filings aren't going to stop. Either it's Upper Ark or it's going to be
There's
a
no
local
doubt.
guy.
This is not the end of, whether they remove us from this plan, there will be another plan down the road, we all agree with that, in fact, I'll tell you that. So, you know, if we have a plan for the future, then I'm cool.
All right, we don't need to beat a dead horse now. I think the next step is the Thursday meeting, and we'll see where that goes. But if it's in the back of our minds and people care, I know the ranchers up here care, and they do see a need for that. And I know we care as we build our strategic vision for the future. So. All right, done.
Okay, good, thank you. Public comment?
Not right now.
Cool.
I would move we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded to adjourn, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay.